Pirate's Most Powerful Villain, Chapter 961-980. Chapter 961-Decisive. A scream was refreshing, and everyone felt all kinds of pain from the sound. What kind of torture is this to make people scream like this? In the distance, Gohan and Krillin rushed towards them. It's coming soon, just ahead. Even they heard the cry. Qin is also watching everything. To be honest, he was worried about Sun Wukong. After all, his arrival has changed the timeline, and because of his plans, he must be prepared to adjust at any time. But if you want to achieve something big, there are things you have to endure, and he knows this well. But even though resurrection is just a trivial matter for Qin, except in his otherworldly space, once he makes such a bizarre move in the Dragon Ball world, the top king, Quanwang, will definitely know all about it. Even though he thinks that King Quan will not take him seriously, the plan is the plan, and he can't mix too much of his own will and daring. And once King Quan learns, he may take action to destroy the universe, which is not impossible. In that case, it is equivalent to turning the road that Qin has paved for himself into a small road, and once it rises to a full-scale war, Qin himself will not have any worries about his life at that time. It is this mysterious energy that is used to detect Dragon Ball. Before the source of the mysterious energy of the world, Qin did not intend to do anything out of the ordinary. Qin thought about the countermeasures. The fire of life of anyone in this world is like the water in the quilt, clear and clear to Qin, and the glass of water of Sun Wukong is constantly decreasing. When the whole cup is empty, Sun Wukong also dies. At this time, Sun Wukong was caught in both hands by the giant ape Vegeta. Will Sun Wukong die? After all, the timeline here is a little bit later. The screams continued, but the strength was obviously insufficient. Maybe 2 seconds, no more than a second, the trend of history would be rewritten. But this is the case. Can't hesitate any longer. At this moment, a clever plan emerged in Qin mind. Qin shot, very decisive. But Qin people were still hidden there, and there was no change on the surface. Because he doesn't have to do it himself. The ghost followed the call in Qin heart and suddenly appeared behind Qin. And the details Qin had already described to him through telepathy. Really do this. Don't need to kill anyone. Qin didn't look back, just spit out 2 words coldly, immediately. The ghost no longer hesitated, quietly turned into a cloud of smoke, and suddenly floated over. The ghost figure bypassed the giant ape's legs and entered Sun Wukong's body from the bottom. Just when Sun Wukong was about to become a pool of blood, the timing was just right. The great ape Vegeta was still exerting his strength, but he seemed to feel a little resistance. He thought that Sun Wukong's body was so hard, so he continued to increase his grip strength. But he didn't know that there was a ghost attached to Sun Wukong, and the current Vegeta's strength could not kill Sun Wukong. In this way, Qin doesn't have to expose himself in a drastic manner, and can continue to follow the plan he set. But at this time, Qin felt a little strange. Qin felt that these secrets were being watched. Was it the King of Realms, or the King of Quan? No, as long as it wasn't an obvious move, the Realm King wouldn't notice him, but who would it be? No matter so much, the most important thing is to stabilize the form in front of you, maybe it's your own illusion. In the rewriting of the script, as a 7-star powerhouse, how could Qin tolerate such a thing happening? Now, he has no choice but to take action, not to prove anything. Even if he fights head-on, he is not afraid of gods. This is just for the entertainment of the game. At least there is a ghost in the body of Sun Wukong, and it is not a problem to last for a while. Just wish the timeline wasn't delayed so much. Not far away, Krillin and Gohan were still rushing towards them. And as the distance got closer, the shining ball of light in the sky made them more and more strange. It was already evening, and the inexplicable ball of light in the sky looked like the moon. At this moment, Gohan suddenly said loudly, "Uncle Krillin, look." Qin and Vivi laughed, and sure enough, the timeline was connected. And below the two, it was Vegeta, who had transformed into a giant ape monster, holding Sun Wukong in his hand. In the sky, Krillin gave instructions. Gohan, let's land and hide first. Gohan said tremblingly, then, what is that? Don't ask, come here. Yakilobe also sensed a glimmer of hope, raised his head and said, wow, they're here. But although Krillin urged Gohan, he was actually thinking, how could Vegeta become a giant ape? And Vegeta was still wild at this time, saying, he, your bones are broken, does it hurt? Krillin and Gohan both landed on the ground. Oops, Goku was caught by him, come here soon. The two quietly went behind the giant ape Vegeta, and at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared, and they jumped. Yakilobe, oh, why are you here? It turned out that he came over and explained to them. You know, that giant ape monster is the Saiyan. Krillin clenched his fists and said, I know that if I can cut off his tail, we can restore him to his original shape. Cut off the tail. Krillin had a plan. Gohan, you and Yakilobe go in front of him, divert his eyes, and I'll find a way to cut off his tail from behind. But the two still felt a little hesitant about it. Kaylin, who had already run far away, then urged, hurry up, or Wukong will die. Yes. But Gohan was the only one who agreed. At this moment, Yakilobe thought, stop teasing, divert his attention. Isn't that a death sentence? Even if he restores his original shape, he will not be able to defeat him. And Gohan is also eager to save his father, hoping that Wukong can hold on. But Kaylin knew that Wukong's chi was about to disappear, and it was very likely that he would return to the west soon, but he still did not hesitate in his footsteps. The giant ape Vegeta also found them at this time, and his hands relaxed a little. He looked left and right and said, well, it seems that someone is coming, where is it? On a boulder next to Vegeta, a small figure shouted, here I am. Put my dad down. The great ape Vegeta looked at the hairy boy and said with a smile, it's really interesting, it's Kakarot's son, you came here specially to see your father for the last time, ha ha ha, you're right here. Time to collect the body for him. I'll kill him right away. At this time, Krillin has successfully detoured behind Vegeta, a place about the same height as his waist. Kaylin raised his right arm and said, okay, vitality slash. As the airflow gathered, a disc-shaped light spot appeared on Kling's palm. Chapter 962-Downwind. The giant ape Vegeta didn't know that he had made a plan at this time, and was still proudly showing it to Gohan. He put a hand on Sun Wukong's head and said, watch carefully, he will soon turn into pieces. Klin held up his vitality and aimed at the direction. I'm so sorry, he seems to have passed out. What Vegeta the Great Ape didn't know was that even if he broke my empty head with his hands, the result would not be what he thought. With a sound of klinga, the vitality chopped out of his hand, heading straight for the stout tail of the giant ape Vegeta. The two saw that the distance was getting closer and closer, and the hope was getting bigger and bigger. But in an instant, when Yuan Chizan was about to cut off Vegeta's tail, all hope was in vain in an instant. The giant ape Vegeta suddenly jumped up, his vitality was emptied, and he flew past his feet, cutting off 2 mountains in the distance. Krillin and Gohan were shocked and could hardly believe what was happening in front of them. Klein said, no way. At this time, Vegeta also fell to the ground again. Great Ape Vegeta said, I have seen you behind me for a long time, you Earthlings are easy to be sentimental, it is impossible to let only a child save his father, although you know the tale is, but still not used. Krillin and Gohan didn't know what to say at this point, and they didn't know what to do in the next second. The Great Ape Vegeta smiled proudly and said, don't worry. When I solve Kakarot, I will come to clean up you. Keelan began to feel deep self-blame in his heart. He didn't expect his plan to be seen through, and he underestimated Vegeta's mind, but Keelan still didn't give up. He couldn't watch Wukong get killed, but the other party's the strength is too strong for him, and Kaylin can't get close. Krillin gritted his teeth and shouted, damn. Hurry up and deal with him like a way, hurry up. Giant Ape Vegeta laughed wildly and said, ha ha ha, you want to beat me? It's really whimsical. Gohan growled, let him go, let go. But all has been in vain. But at this time, only Chin Yang knew that if everything went back to normal, then Vegeta would be shocked the next second. Sure enough, at this moment, a little fat man with a knife suddenly came out. At the juncture where Vegeta was not guarding at all, he jumped up, raised the knife in his hand, and brushed it. It's a god-level teammate. Vegeta's tail was cut off. V. The little fat man fell to the ground, the huge tail also landed beside him. The little fat man gritted his teeth, and hurriedly slipped away. Chin Yang knew that Yakilobe was a swordsman in flesh, and his breath was too weak for Vegeta to feel it, and this knife was indeed historic, surprisingly beautiful, and crisp. This knife is perfect. At that time, Krillin's eyes widened, as if he couldn't believe the facts in front of him, that a Lucci soldier had brought such a miracle. Great Ape Vegeta turned pale in shock and said, ah, tail, there is actually another one. But no matter what he said, it was over, and the Saiyan without the tail could not maintain the posture of the giant ape. Vegeta felt that the chi in his body was gradually disappearing, and the Monkey King in his hand became bigger and bigger. He had to let go of his hand, and he returned to his original posture. Gohan watched in astonishment, and was speechless. Yakilobe hid behind the stone, terrified, and muttered in his heart, this is all I have to do, and the rest is left to you. Vegeta gasped and glared angrily at these people, while Sun Wukong, still bruised but still breathing, lay there. Only at this moment did Lin regain his senses and said, the tail was cut off. However, if you want to be good, you can blame Vegeta himself, and the name of the wind and waves is not for nothing. Praised. Well done, Yakilobe. He's back to normal. And Yakilobe didn't like to hear such compliments. He was still comforting himself, it's none of my business, you can handle the rest yourself. Vegeta only had one eye left, and at this time, he looked in a state of embarrassment and said, you hateful fellows, you annoyed me, you will die faster. And Gohan didn't know the reason, and was still wondering why the monster suddenly disappeared. Vegeta yelled, and it seemed that he was really angry this time, humph. I'm going to kill you all. A bunch of trash. But he was so embarrassed by the group of trash he said, the Prince of the Saiyans, Chin Yang thought silently in his heart, you are about to end. Vegeta suddenly became ruthless and rushed in front of Gohan. Looking at this little brat, Vegeta showed an evil smile and said, I'll cut you first. Without a doubt, he gave Gohan a punch, without the slightest bit of softness, his fist sank into Gohan's stomach, and his body was only the size of Vegeta's fist. Blood spit out from Gohan's sore mouth, and Vegeta said, HMPH, why don't the hybrids of Saiyans and Earthlings fight so hard? Why don't you use your real kung fu? Vegeta raised her arms, ready to give this little brat another blow. Seeing that the situation was not good, Krillin had already rushed over from behind Vegeta. But Vegeta already felt his anger and kicked back. Krillin was kicked like a baseball, his body bounced off the rocks, some hits, smashed 3 rocks in a row, and finally fell to the ground. On the ground, Vegeta became proud again and said, humph. Why do you force me to change the order? Yakilobe, who was now unscathed, hid behind a stone and witnessed everything, and muttered in his mouth, I said earlier that he is very powerful. Vegeta looked at Gohan who was clutching his stomach on the ground and said, why, get up, let's play together. He grabbed Gohan with one hand and said, HMPH, is that all that good? The trash's son is still trash. Vegeta rammed Gohan's head with his head, and blood was immediately left on Gohan's forehead. Oh, your blood turns out to be red too. But it's not bad to die with my father. I'm really kind. Vegeta threw it at random and threw Gohan next to Sun Wukong like garbage. Chin Yang sighed in his heart, this guy can really pretend. If Vegeta saw him, what would he say? If Chin Yang showed him his strength again, what would this guy say? It must have been a disobedience. the Saiyan prince who pretended to be in the wind and waves. Yang deeply felt that this guy was really ambitious. If he continued to discipline him like this after the curtain ended, he might have to kill him. Like Raditz, he would use another form to control him to continue acting. New book uploaded. The new book has been uploaded. Please collect it _flowers _. Introduction. Songchu has become a system supplier of Wanji, and can use various modules to make systems. A great scientist system that extracts black technology from film and television works. A great star system that gathers popularity to shape famous stars. And a great plundering system that enhances the host's actual combat power and plunders the world. As long as Songchu thinks about it, there is no protagonist that cannot be created. However, all of this will bring countless benefits to Songchu, the mastermind behind the scenes. Main character. It's just a chess piece. Chapter 963-Last Vigor. The ghost was slightly stimulated, and Sun Wukong regained a sense of consciousness. He was extremely tired now, half-opened Yang Jing, watching his son being ruthlessly thrown by his side, full of father's concern for his son. Even though he felt extremely guilty, he still encouraged. Gohan, Dad is seriously injured and can't move. You have to cheer up and fight for me. He was also injured and his strength has weakened a lot. Vegeta stood on the stone, looking down from the top, and said, Kakarot is indeed not simple, and his mind is quite good. Although Gohan was seriously injured, he was still breathing and said with closed eyes, Dad, no, he is too strong, I can't beat him. Now, according to the order of the game, the first one is Kakarot, the next one to kill is Kakarot's son, then the bald boy, and finally the short fat guy who cut off my tail with a sword. Yakilobe, who was hiding behind the stone, said in horror, yeah, he hasn't forgotten about it. It's strange to forget, this guy won the best of the game, and no one has such a bad memory. Sun Wukong said, it doesn't matter if you can't beat him, you have to stop him, I know your power can be stronger. It seems that Wukong has realized that the potential contained in his son is so great that one day he will even surpass himself. After that, Krillin will take the opportunity to kill him. Vegeta jumped down, with the same evil smile as always, still with pride and contempt. Krillin struggled to get up. No, I can't move either. After all, Gohan was a child, and his weakness and fear caused more damage than the wound on his body, so he couldn't move. Bastard, you want everyone to die in vain, did Piccolo teach you this? Sun Wukong was not really blaming his son, but encouraged him with scolding. Vegeta landed, and gravity stomped on Sun Wukong's stomach. A mouthful of blood was spit out, and with a wow, Sun Wukong rolled over with severe pain on his body. Vegeta looked at him out of the corner of her eyes and laughed. HMPH, a waste like you actually made me fly so hard. Sun Wukong is still thinking about his son, his consciousness has been extremely blurred. Enlightenment Rice. Then Vegeta kicked again, kicking Sun Wukong in the face, and his injury became more and more serious. And the most embarrassing thing is to count the ghost. According to Qin Yang's instructions, he can only hide in Sun Wukong's body and endure this humiliation. Gohan saw his father being ravaged by his side, and a fire suddenly burst into his heart. Assistant. Vegeta laughed wildly and didn't pay any attention. Stop. Gohan crawled over there, and suddenly he stood up. The wound on his body seemed to heal all at once. You stop me. Gohan's body suddenly had an amazing aura, and even Vegeta had to start paying attention. He stopped his abusive behavior and turned his head to look at this inconspicuous little guy. Gohan rolled his eyes and said, I'm going to hit you. Vegeta was stunned for a while, and then said, you want to beat me? With your 2 strokes. Suddenly, the arrogance on Gohan's body was high, and he sent out a wave of Qigong from his palm, but the attack was too obvious, and Vegeta easily avoided it with a single upward movement. But Gohan was even more unexpected. The little guy jumped up, and when Vegeta was careless, he kicked him in the face, and Vegeta flew out. Vegeta, who was attacked in the air, was very surprised. How could it be possible? He flew back and kicked Gohan back. This kick just hit Gohan's forehead, and the pain made him unable to open his eyes. Monkey King lay there, calling out to Krillin. In the sky, Vegeta and Gohan begin to fight. My Vegeta is not easy to deal with. Gohan was knocked back again and again, and he fought back again and again. Krillin staggered to Wukong and blamed himself. Wukong, I'm useless, he's too powerful, you should let Gohan escape. And Sun Wukong suddenly said something inexplicable. Now, Krillin, I'll give it to you. Krillin feels that Wukong is confused. What else is there now? This is the vitality bomb I formed by gathering the life vitality of the whole earth. Even if it has dissipated, it should still be able to defeat him. Krillin covered the arm in his hand, questioned, and said, What? Krillin, come on, take my hand now. Handshake. I don't understand. Come on, Gohan won't be able to hold on anymore. Krillin held Sun Wukong's hand, and only by touching it did he know that all the bones inside were broken. It's okay, hold on, don't let go. Krillin did so silently, not knowing what Wukong had in mind. Catch it. Suddenly, Krillin felt a force, very strong, very warm, and this force was slowly flowing to his body along Wukong's arm. Ah, what is this? When all the energy was transferred, Kling was surprised. This power was simply too powerful, and he also felt that such a powerful energy was concentrated on his body at the first time in Heisei. Can't help sighing. Wow, so strong, so powerful. Goku further told him how to use it. With the palms up, he hits slowly, forming a ball. Krillin did as he did, and it seemed that it was still a little difficult for him to use this life force for the first time. At this time, Sun Wukong suddenly fainted. This was indeed unexpected. The shadow secretly communicated to Qin Yang through telepathy. The injury on Sun Wukong was too severe. Although he was barely alive, his consciousness could no longer hold. Living. Qin Yang acquiesced and let the ghost sleep temporarily in Sun Wukong's body to prevent another accident. But this seems to be a problem for Kaylin. Although he followed Sun Wukong's instructions, this kind of vitality is not so easy to control. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Kaylin's mind. It's the energy of all beings, so just relax and keep your inner peace. Krillin was surprised and quickly asked, Who is it? This voice is the Realm King, and Qin Yang just wanted to pass the message to him in this form. Don't worry about it, do it at my word. In desperation, Klein could only think that it was some kind of god to help him, or it was his hallucination. After all, he is also a fellow disciple of the same family as Sun Wukong, and after some guidance, he still has some attainments. Keelan imagined a pool of calm water in his heart, with rippling blog posts on it, and as he understood it, the pool of water gradually began to subside, and finally turned into a mirror-like surface. At this moment, a wave of energy began to gather, and Keelan frowned slightly, restraining this force, so that it would not be scattered. The energy, like a small stream of water, began to slowly dissociate from each cell that originally poured into Krillin's body, and finally formed a whole. Chapter 964-Resurgence. A glowing orb the size of his body suddenly appeared in Krillin's palm. On the other end, Gohan was losing ground, fearing that he might not last long. Kling looked at this incredible thing in surprise and said, This, formed a star. This is the vitality bomb. Jia Wang clenched his fist and said. Keelan, hit him with vitality bullets. No one can gather vitality bullets now, so there is only one chance. You must hit him, and when using vitality bullets, you can't just rely on your eyes, you must also use your heart to sense the opponent of evil spirits, and then strike hard. Kaylin became more and more curious. This could no longer be an illusion, and said, Who are you? You know so much. In another world, the king of the realm sighed and said, I am the king of the realm, and it is I who taught the vitality bomb to Sun Wukong. It's up to you, this blow will decide the fate of the earth, and this vitality bomb condenses the whole earth. Hope. I understand, don't worry, leave it to me. Gohan was blown away again, and was sitting on the rock panting heavily. It's amazing. After fighting with my father for a long time, I can still be so strong. Krillin jumped to the high ground where Vegeta was before, and his eyes were locked on Vegeta. Stinky boy is quite tricky, but it looks like you can't take it anymore. Vegeta didn't realize the crisis was coming, and was still trying to kill the father and son Goku in his own way. But no matter what, Chinyang knew that in a short while, the time would come for him to take action. Vegeta rushed over and threw a Qigong wave at random. Gohan dodged, and posed for a flashback with a similar energy. Facing the flash cannon that was about to hit him, Vegeta laughed wildly and said, "Hey, he's still dying." Suddenly, his people disappeared, and they came to the ground again, standing in front of Gohan. The two were only 10 meters apart. But this Vegeta is really a lot of nonsense. Hey, now you understand that no matter how many times you practice the Earth's waste, don't even try to beat me. Unfortunately, it's too late. Chinyang shook his head and couldn't help but let out a deep laugh. But because the two people were fighting each other, the speed of each other's movement was too fast, although Krillin knew how to use it. After all, it was the first time, and there was only one chance. Klein cautiously locked on Vegeta's target. He told himself to use his heart to feel the evil spirit, use his heart, but from the visual point of view, Klein always felt that the direction he had locked was deviated, so Klein closed his eyes. Vegeta stored energy in both hands, and suddenly both palms were released, followed by a few more movements just now, and countless Qigong cannons were fired like this, rushing towards Gohan like rain. Gohan kept dodging, and the explosions behind him kept following his footsteps, but after all, Gohan had too little combat experience. He accidentally took a wrong step and hit the Qigong bullet perfectly. Fortunately, the power of this kind of release is not particularly large, and Gohan was just blown away. Gohan struggled to get up, and seemed to have some fighting strength. Vegeta took the opportunity to stride forward and said wildly, "Ha ha ha, look after Kakarot, let's see how your unpromising son died." At this time, Kalen suddenly opened his eyes, and he felt that evil aura. Vitality bomb, the final blow. But he didn't want to have another accident at this time. Yakulab saw a strong chi gathering in Keelan's hand. He couldn't help but stand up and said, "Dead rabbit, what are you dawdling about? Fight." Not good. Although this seems to be encouraging, Vegeta is not deaf. Hearing this, mad Vegeta suddenly turned around. And Kalen couldn't stop at this time. He could only fight hard, gritted his teeth and cursed, "This idiot. Go to hell." Krillin threw out the vitality bomb in his hand, and a shiny thing came out of his hand like this, drawing a beautiful arc like eyes, and quickly flew towards Vegeta. What? Vegeta was shocked. It was the first time he had encountered such an amazing gas. At this time, he was almost in front of Gohan. Krillin clenched his fists and shouted, "Hit him." This is not a big deal for Vegeta. Unexpectedly, in a hurry, Vegeta's reaction was also very fast, and it was another jump. The vitality bomb was still running towards the target, and it was about to hit Vegeta. I didn't want this guy to suddenly open his legs. Row past Vegeta's vault. The empty last hope. Everyone's hearts are cold, the last hope is so ridiculously shattered. But Chinyang smiled happily, because he knew that according to his own plot, what happened next might surprise these people even more. Krillin closed his eyes and covered his head, very annoyed. "It's over and missed." Even the Realm King said in frustration, "Everything is over." And the vitality bullet did not dissipate like this, and still slowly moved forward along the trajectory, and now it is Gohan who is facing the ball of light. Perhaps out of instinct, Gohan stretched out his hands, but the vitality bomb did not explode, but stopped in Gohan's hand. Everyone present who watched the battle was dumbfounded, except Chinyang. At this time, Chinyang imitated Sun Wukong's voice and said to Gohan's mind, "Gohan, hit back, the vitality bomb belongs to us, you don't have a trace of evil in your heart, you can definitely hit it back. When Gohan heard the induction, perhaps his father's words inspired him. Gohan closed his eyes and thought of Vegeta as if he had learned from a teacher. He exerted strength with his arms, and the prototype ball of light was sent out again. In the sky, Vegeta was still struggling to escape. He wanted to avoid the violent explosion of the thing just now, but he didn't want to bow his head, and the spherical object suddenly came to his feet. Everything was over, and the violent explosion was staged in the air, shining brightly, overshadowing the setting sun, and Vegeta's shadow slowly dissipated in the incomparably dazzling light. Everything was calm, everyone watched this incredible scene, and the long-suppressed joy broke out like this. Finally heaved a sigh of relief. However, as something fell from a high sky to the ground, a haze appeared on everyone's face again. It was Vegeta, who wasn't turned to ashes, but it looked like he was seriously injured. Gohan said, "It's that Saiyan. Cling comforted. Don't panic, he's already dead." Krillin walked over, looked at Vegeta and said, "This guy is too cruel, he will die, but let's dig a grave and bury him." It seems that even when dealing with vicious enemies, Krillin is not dehumanizing. To their surprise, Vegeta suddenly opened his eyes and said, "Dig your own grave." Everyone was shocked, and it was unexpected that Vegeta, who was already dead, would be revived. Chapter 965-Gohan transforms. Vegeta's hair was frizzy. He got up and said, "This move is really powerful, I thought I was dead." Another World King also didn't understand the reason. How could he still survive when he was hit head-on by the vitality bullet? Vegeta stood up, looking very embarrassed, and continued to say arrogantly, "Although I was seriously injured, I still have the strength to kill you bastards." With a snap, Vegeta slapped Krillin away. At this time, everyone was only breathing. Krillin lay on the side and vomited blood. "Kill you all first, and then when my physical strength recovers, I will completely destroy this planet, ha ha ha." Vegeta slowly walked towards Goku and his son. Goku was completely unconscious, and although Gohan could barely stand, it was really only reluctant. Vegeta said as he walked, "Damn, it's really the most shameful thing for me, Vegeta, to try my best to be beaten to the top by you rubbish together." He was panting as he walked. If Goku and the others jumped out at this time with a full fighting force, Vegeta would definitely lose. "Okay, your end is here, ah." Vegeta gathered all his strength and tried to use a big explosion to turn these guys into a full stop. This guy finally stopped starting to wave when he had the upper hand. With a rumbling sound, with Vegeta at the center, the ground began to shatter. There was a strong wind blowing, and there were rubble all over the place. But Goku and others were only blown away, but Vegeta stood there gasping for breath, and the scale of the explosion was far less than he expected. He didn't even believe that those three guys were still alive, and his destructive power was only so much now. Vegeta recognized the facts. It seemed that he was even more hurt than he imagined. He used the sky dance technique to soar into the air and landed in front of Gohan. He could only start with the most effective of them all. Vegeta bowed her head and saw that Gohan's tail had grown out at some point. This is not a good sign. If you know that the moon made by Vegeta is still there, once seen by this kid, Vegeta will really die without a place to die. Vegeta raised her arms, wanting to kill Gohan immediately. At this moment, there was a sudden cry from behind him. "Ah ya ya." As soon as Vegeta turned around, he saw the short fat man Yakilobe lunging at him with a knife in his hand. At this time, even Vegeta, who had always been arrogant, was too frightened. He raised his hand to fight back in a panic, but due to the wrong position and the limited length of his arms, Yakiro's sword fell, the blood spilled out, and the short, fat man fell to the ground because he was so violent. Vegeta fell to the ground with a shocked expression on her face. Looking at his victory, Yakilobe stood up with a smile and cheered, "Ha ha ha, I succeeded, brat, you deserve it, ha ha." This time, Yakilobe really came alive, and said proudly, "How is it? You know how good Yakilobe is." "I don't want to," Vegeta let out a whimper, and the person stood up again. It may be that the protective clothing played a role. Vegeta really thought he was dead before, but since he was not dead, his temper swelled again. "Come up. You treacherous fellow," Vegeta cursed. Seeing that the situation was not good, Yakulobe made another sideways knife and slashed at Vegeta's neck, but this time Vegeta wouldn't give him another chance, so he ducked with a tilt of his head. Yakulobe immediately threw the knife, and said in a panic, "I'm sorry, it hurts a little bit. I'm just joking, I don't want to really hurt you. Ah, I adore you, I'm willing to be you mate." Vegeta was furious, and was ruined by this short fat man twice in a row, but because of trouble, Vegeta wanted to kill this guy for a long time. How could he listen to his nonsense? Vegeta kicked Yakulobe's chubby face, followed by another punch that sent the guy flying far away. At this time, Krillin gave his last strength and shouted, "Gohan, Sky, look at that ball of light in the sky." Gohan had lost his sense of direction long ago, and was crawling forward, not wanting to fall from a height, just looking at the sky. Vegeta was in a hurry and shouted badly, "I can't make you transform. Go to hell." He rushed over and stepped on Gohan with all his strength. Which Gohan had changed his body, and Vegeta's foot was not in the way at all. Gohan's body got bigger and bigger, his clothes started to tear, and his consciousness began to blur. Vegeta was completely in a hurry. "You must be killed immediately. The current situation is a gamble for Sun Wukong and others, and this time is really the last hope." Vegeta had an idea and thought of the tail. He was too anxious before and forgot about it. Vegeta grabbed Gohan's tail. At this time, the tail that could be clenched tightly with one hand became like a pipe. Vegeta put his arms around the thing and started to pull with all his strength. At this time, Gohan had completely transformed into a giant ape, and he raised his hand and smashed it on Vegeta's head. With a plop, Vegeta fell to the ground. Behind him, a huge shadow appeared, and the giant ape raised its head and roared loudly to the sky. In the past, Goku was completely irrational after turning into a giant ape, and now Gohan is the same, starting to frantically destroy the surrounding, which is the crazy nature of the Saiyan. Gohan the giant ape held up a boulder, and despite the bleak hope, Krillin shouted, "Gohan, clean up the Saiyans." The giant ape hesitated for a while and continued to roar, and when he noticed Vegeta under him, the boulder in his hand smashed down. It seems that Gohan still has some sense of reason, and it may be because of the existence of ordinary earth blood. Vegeta Monkey jumped away in a hurry, thinking that if it weren't for the serious injury, he wouldn't pay attention to one or two more monsters, and the moon he created would still exist for at least a month, and now his only chance it was to break Gohan's tail. The confused Gohan looked for Vegeta, he jumped up and walked towards Vegeta, and Vegeta also saw this opportunity, and hurriedly charged in his hand. A disc appeared, Vegeta lost it without hesitation. Gohan felt a burst of pain, and when he looked down, his tail had just been cut off. Vegeta showed a happy smile, but immediately turned away from shock. Because it will take some time for Gohan to recover his original appearance, and at this time he is already in the process of jumping and just hits Vegeta. Chapter 966 The time has come. With a bang, Vegeta was crushed to the ground by his huge body, and Gohan returned to his human form. Vegeta was lying on the ground, and now he couldn't move. With only a little strength, he took out a transmitter from his chest and pressed the switch on it. Far in the East capital, which was destroyed by the Saiyans, a star object suddenly floated up in the ruins. The ball moved rapidly, and from time to time it came to Vegeta's side. With a puff, the hatch above opened. That was Vegeta's ship, and everything seemed to work as Vegeta started, crawling towards the ship. Krillin stood up, picked up Dumpty Dumpty's knife, and slowly walked towards Vegeta. He would never let Vegeta die like this. But Chin Yang didn't think so, he thought silently in his heart. "I want to avenge the people you killed, go to hell." Wait. Goku's voice resounded in Krillin's heart again. "Is it Goku?" Chin Yang didn't answer and continued. "Ah, I can't speak, I can only send a message to your heart. Forgive me, Kaylin, please let him go, please, forgive me for being so human, and let him go. Kaylin couldn't believe it at this time, and said, are you crazy? He killed our companions, and he also wanted to destroy the earth. Now let him go and wait for him to recover, and he will definitely come back. But even if Qin Yang doesn't speak in place of Sun Wukong, it is estimated that this guy will say the same. Even so. Do you think he will change his ways like Piccolo? You are too naive, it is impossible, he has no human courage and will never repent, do you understand? Qin Yang certainly understands, and Vegeta will not change only after the wind and waves, and the rest will gradually change under Qin Yang's arrangement. Qin Yang said silently, I understand, I also know that Vegeta is too powerful, but I can't tell. I just think it's a pity that he is dead now. Unfortunately, Krillin asked inexplicably. I practiced with the King of the Realm because I wanted to reach the highest level of martial arts. I didn't expect Vegeta to be many times stronger than me. To be honest, I lost completely, but I was very excited in my heart. It was like the fight with Piccolo, but maybe because I'm also a Saiyan, so I must surpass Vegeta, cultivate super strength and defeat him. I know it's wrong, but please, next time I want to deal with it alone him. Qin Yang smiled, he knew that his acting was good. Keelan was hesitant, and finally put down the knife in Goku's face. Okay, you have the qualifications for human nature, and it is all up to you to cover the current Earth. But Wukong, next time you must use your own strength to destroy him. Vegeta took this opportunity to finally flow into the spaceship, and the moment the hatch closed, he left a sentence. You bastards, remember it well, there will be no miracles next time, just wait and see. Ha ha ha. The spacecraft lifted off slowly and disappeared in a blink of an eye. And Qin Yang just wanted to say, wait and see, Vegeta, you will see a miracle again, and it will come to you. Vegeta closed his eyes in the spaceship. He should have a good rest. I don't know how long it took. When Vegeta opened his eyes again, he suddenly found that the world outside the spaceship seemed to be wrong. After all, although the universe is vast, it is full of the Milky Way, but here, how can it be pitch black? Vegeta was looking at his spaceship, and he was suddenly surprised that the spaceship was actually on standby. Damn, is this thing broken? In Space Voyage, once such a thing happened, Vegeta pressed the start button and the spaceship restarted, but after 2 or 3 seconds, the spaceship unexpectedly returned to standby automatically with a loud bang. Vegeta was startled. Could it be that the spaceship was really broken? And when he looked out the window, Vegeta suddenly found that he had come to an unknown place, only to see the light outside the window was dark purple, and there were floating blocks everywhere. At this time, there was a sudden sound of dang-dang from outside the spacecraft. Vegeta opened one eye. Could this be someone knocking on the door? Then, the knock on the door rang again. Vegeta rubbed his eyes. He knew that this was not a dream. It seemed to be a certain planet. Maybe the spacecraft was out of order. Asshole. He cursed inwardly, but he could only accept the fact. Vegeta opened the hatch, and the air poured in. Sure enough, it was a certain planet. The navigation of this spacecraft may have been faulty, but where is it? When the cabin door was fully opened, there was a person outside the door, who looked like an earthling, but dressed in weird clothes. With long hair, wearing a black long-distance running, with a gloomy face, he also has a forehead guard on his head, with a magic word written on it. Ellipsis ellipsis. Wind no extreme, dream no love, 773,943,984. The extreme wind, Wanwa mirror, 874,542,149. Close black lens bracket. And his eyes, somehow, the pupils are a little different from normal people. Vegeta frowned, and one eye radiated the light of the cold storage. Although her body was extremely weak, she had to hold on. Is this the Earth? The man replied coldly, no. Vegeta breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't have to face Sun Wukong and the others. As for the others, as long as Vegeta had a chance to breathe, he felt that he could easily handle everything. Vegeta climbed out and said, "What is this place?" "Fantastic place." "What did you say?" Vegeta looked at those eyes, and the more she looked, the more strange it became. The pupils were red, and there were tadpole-like things spinning on them. "My master would like to see you, please come with me." Vegeta was very surprised. How could he suddenly come to this place? After thinking about it, he thought that he should follow this strange guy to see, or that Frieza knew about his private trip to Earth. With all kinds of unease, Vegeta slowly followed behind this mysterious person and walked towards the depths. I don't know how long it took. The mysterious man suddenly stopped and said coldly, "Here it is." Looking around, it seems that nothing has changed. There are floating blocks everywhere, and the ground here can't tell what it is made of. There is no feeling of land when stepping on it, and it can't be called a stone. What the hell is this place? At this moment, a man stood there, dressed in white, and said, "This is not a ghost place. People go back to a ghost place after they die. This is my place." Yang turned his head slowly, put his hands on his back, and stared at Vegeta. Vegeta also looked at Yang. He couldn't feel any breath from this person. He looked like an ordinary person. "Your place. Who are you?" "My name is Yang. I'm sorry to invite His Royal Highness here." When Vegeta heard what the other party called her, Prince, he immediately became cautious and said, "Who are you?" Chapter 967 again. Yang waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I don't mean to harm you in any way. I do know something about you, including your future, but I don't want to interfere with those." "Then what do you mean?" "Let's make a deal. I'll make you stronger, and you'll meet me from time to time." The reason why Yang said this is to take care of the overall situation. After all, Vegeta will play an important role in the Dragon Ball world in the future. Anyway, if something goes wrong, Yang will erase his memory. Vegeta frowned, thought for a while, and said, "Deal." He smiled. "What deal are you going to do with me to make me stronger and meet you from time to time?" "Ahahaha." Vegeta bent over, which seemed to be the funniest joke he'd heard recently. Yang also smiled and said, "Yes, that's it." Vegeta suddenly stared at Yang and said, "Are you brushing me?" "Huh, you thought I couldn't help you if I was injured." Yang said calmly, "You misunderstood. You can become stronger, stronger than before, I mean it." Vegeta said irritably, "I need to tell you that I have become stronger. If you know who Lao Su is, don't make a fool of yourself." "What are you trying to get me here for?" "Well, it really has to be like this." Yang sighed deeply and shook his head. "Well, I'll take care of your injury first, then how about we have a duel?" Vegeta showed an evil smile and said, "Please, I heard right, you want to cure me. Haha, since you know my identity, aren't you afraid that I will kill you?" Yang shook his finger and said, "No, you still can't kill me." A smile appeared on Vegeta's face. He looked at Yang. Although he was not tall, if he wanted to, he would have the strength. Of course, the premise was that Yang in his eyes was really as he thought. Weak. But the expression on Vegeta's face suddenly changed again, and his attention shifted from Yang to another person, the gloomy guide. At this moment, the man who made Vegeta feel mysterious suddenly burst out with a strange, very powerful aura. Only then did Vegeta understand that when Yang said, "You can't kill me," he was not referring to himself, but this person, who was afraid that according to Vegeta's current situation, he would not be able to kill Yang. Not even close to his side. It was an air no less than his best state. Vegeta turned back to stare at this person, and the other party didn't know if he was looking at him, but in the direction of Vegeta. "My name is Itachi," he said gloomily. Vegeta snorted and stopped talking. Faced with this weird name, Vegeta had to think for a while. Although this group of people didn't know their identity, their strength was not bad. Or maybe he should endure first. Although Vegeta is proud, he is not a fool. The last word, after thinking about it, he is ready to agree to Qin Yang's proposal first, but the premise is to let him recover from the injury, so that Vegeta still has room to deal with it. And Vegeta also thought about it. Since the other party knows himself, it is not so easy to believe in himself. He may have to make a statement first. Unexpectedly, at this time, Qin Yang suddenly made a decision that shocked Vegeta. Well, why don't you let me heal your wounds first? It's my sincerity, what do you think? Vegeta was stunned, feeling that she had heard it wrong. Are you kidding me? Qin Yang looked at him seriously and said, do you think I'm joking? In fact, Vegeta still can't see Qin Yang's true strength. This kind of breath that is close to nothing, but it is not completely holding his breath, it is also because he has not reached that level. If we talk about Vegeta in the later stage of Dragon Ball, then it was almost the same, and at this time, he naively thought that Qin Yang was just an intelligent ruler with a few powerful subordinates, a careerist in a certain universe. Qin Yang said, whether you agree to my terms or not, Your Royal Highness, I will first come to show my sincerity. Qin Yang just touched with his finger. Vegeta was suddenly full of strength, tired wounds, and all the stains were swept away. Come and fix your clothes too. Then, the protective combat suit on his body also became intact. Vegeta looked at his hands, the sight of one of his blind eyes was restored, and he clenched his fists, and this sense of reality could not go wrong. I didn't expect you to have the ability to heal, so I misunderstood you before. Vegeta grinned at Isho, showing an evil look. Qin Yang said, then do you want to duel now? I don't want to force it. If you are not in the mood today, I can wait for a while, but the ugly words are ahead, and my waiting is limited. Vegeta waved his hand and said, since you know who I am, don't say such things, I'm still happy now. Qin Yang smiled and said, well then, His Royal Highness, let's start now. After saying that, Itachi walked up slowly, and the wide clothes almost covered his entire face. Vegeta was full of fighting spirit at this time, and he wanted to take this opportunity to vent all the anger he had just held back on the earth, and at the same time, it was also to show this group of people, because the other party seemed to underestimate him too much. Vegeta is secretly proud. I am afraid that the other party still does not know that the Saiyans experience life and death. Once the fighting power is restored, it will increase sharply, until a certain peak will become a Super Saiyan. Although this is a legend, and the Saiyan planet is also destroyed, but Vegeta has always believed in this as a royal family, and he feels that only the blood of the royal family is worthy of this legend. And he also believes that as long as he reaches the realm of Super Saiyan, he is invincible. But this ignorance is not funny in Qin Yang's view. In fact, it is also difficult for this prince, and it is also due to his pride. Vegeta gritted her teeth, and suddenly roared. Her aura was like a rainbow, as if a flame suddenly appeared in the entire dark purple space. Vegeta laughed wildly, and sure enough, this feeling was strengthened again. He is in very good shape now. The vindictive energy from Vegeta was blown into the wind, and Itachi's hair and clothes were blown apart. Suddenly Vegeta rushed over at an incredible speed, and Itachi's riding wheel was spinning rapidly. Vegeta punched him, but he didn't want a group of crows to suddenly fly in front of him, and his opponent suddenly disappeared. Vegeta felt a trace of breath behind him, and hurriedly tilted his head to avoid it. It turned out to be 2 darts. Vegeta scolded in his heart, knowing that he didn't have to hide, but he was even more surprised when this guy ran behind him. Facing such a strange trick, Vegeta smiled. Interesting. Chapter 968-Super Nappa vs Juya. On Nabal's side, he was laughing wildly, holding up a huge black ball of energy like a prank child, ready to throw it to the ground. Looking at the huge fire and gas, Nabal estimated that his heart would be very comfortable, and on the other hand, he could deter this stinky fox. Ha ha, keep going, cried Nabal, seeing that the black ball was about to let go. At this time, another Juya suddenly appeared behind Nabal, and Nabal was still immersed in the joy of the moment, only to see the other Juya opened his mouth without hesitation, and the other black the ball just appeared, and at this distance, I am afraid that Nabal can't avoid it. The other tailed beast cannon was fired like this, and Nabal felt another powerful force appearing behind him, and when he turned around like this, the black ball was already coming towards him. Nabal showed a terrified expression. Now it is impossible for him to catch it, and the black ball in his hand has just been released. In this way, the explosion of one black ball will be linked to another, which is twice as much. The damage is naturally unimaginable. With a bang, the sneak attack plan of Juyi's clone was successful. Two black balls collided between the sky and the earth, and a spectacle was created for a while. The black ball was annihilated, and two dark red rays of light appeared at the same time, and then slowly began to merge. In the sky, the heat rises, the clouds are blown away into a huge prototype, and on the ground, sand and rocks are scattered. The huge energy spots are getting bigger and bigger, slowly expanding, and finally become like the lid of a pot, sweeping over a large area of land. Now nowhere is safe, whether in heaven or on earth. The death of the trash fish one after another can be regarded as their retribution for smashing, looting and burning. The wailing overwhelmed by the expanding sound of the explosion is useless no matter how to escape. This is also the moment to test the combat effectiveness, unless you can be on the edge of such an explosion. Survive, otherwise there is only one dead end. This frontal impact is truly earth-shattering. With such a huge amount of energy, the stones melted at high temperature and the wind are all hot. If it is sucked into the lungs by ordinary people, I am afraid that internal burns will be enough. Even Juya himself was involved in the explosion, but it was his energy after all, and he was free to resist this level of energy. The energy wave of the explosion rushed to the top in an instant, and the heat continued for a while, and the clouds in the sky suddenly turned white, and the energy wave that followed the explosion dissipated in an instant, spreading rapidly from the center. Looking from the universe, on the main road of this planet, something suddenly began to search, and it began to spread around, and the fiery red spots were gradually disappearing. This move can really be described as destroying the world. When everything was over, Juya released the protective energy on his body, the earth withered and steam was bubbling up. Now the temperature above is at least a few hundred degrees, but Juya already liked it for a long time. Such an environment. In the corner, Captain Ginyu was fine. This guy grabbed a huge rock to block the impact of the explosion. It seemed that even a powerhouse with a combat power exceeding 100,000 had his own way to resist such an impact. And this explosion was lucky. If Juya released two such giant bombs on the ground in a row, it is estimated that all the land here will be blown away, revealing the underground rock layer. In this way, the once fertile land has been turned into a desolate land. And this is not the full power of Juya. But Juyi still didn't relax, because the chi was still there. On the hill formed by the edge of the explosion, a big bald man climbed up from behind. Naba panted, stared at Juyi in the distance, and shouted loudly. "You bastard! Juya knows what he has in mind. It seems that he needs to increase his energy to deal with this guy, but he can't control that much. Juya feels that he will simply use his full strength next time. Even if the planet is destroyed, it is none of his business. After all, it was the bald head who ran away without permission, and this was the end of disobeying Qin Yang's order." Nabal stood up, blue veins bursting out on his head, and there was a scald on his back. The surface skin was a little red, but it didn't fall off, just like a human being scalded by dozens of degrees of water. It seems that the Super Saiyan's defense is also very strong. Nabal was also very angry. After all, the other party's trick was not a joke. It was clearly intended to kill himself and himself. Nabal shot back, opened his mouth, and sent out a giant qigong wave. Juya stared, followed by another tailed beast cannon, two mouth cannons facing the mouth cannon. The huge explosion started again, but both of them had another purpose. They quickly jumped to the sky and started fight. A giant fox monster fights against a bald man who laughs like a mouse, but the difference in body size does not represent the combat effectiveness. Juya landed and drew a distance. Suddenly, golden light appeared on it again, and a fiery red fox turned golden yellow in an instant, as if it had been coated with sugar, but the yellow thing was no joke. Its function was the same as the energy layer on Nabis himself. Almost, and this is also the ultimate form of Juya. Going, fox with 9 tails behind. Nabil smiled and said, "You still have to wear golden light." Juyi said, "You bald head is not the same." The two threw themselves together again, and Nabil jumped up after running. Juya was not weak. Nabil clasped his hands into a ball, ready to hang down like this, but Juya's mouth was already open. Machine. With a puff, Juya bit Nabil, and at the same time Nabil madly hammered Juya's upper jaw with his hand. Juya jumped and swayed him like a bone, and then threw him aside. His face was also injured by Nabil's hammer, but with the help of Juya's healing power, this small wound was immediately healed. It was restored. Nabil, who was in the pile of stones, rushed up again, and Juya used his claws to meet him. This time he hit Nabil firmly, and the ground suddenly trembled. Nabil was trampled under the paws by Juya, but it was not too late. Juya changed his eyes, and then he exerted his strength. The ground suddenly cracked several cracks, and Nabil's people submerged in the soil. It was another angry blow to follow Juya to raise his paw. There are more and more cracks in the earth. Bang bang bang, several times in a row, knowing that this land has been hard-hewn with deep potholes. And at this time, after Juyi's next blow, his claws seemed to have encountered some kind of resistance and could not be pulled out. Following a huge force pulling Juya, Juya really sank his paw into the hole. But Juya's body is there after all, and it is impossible to go further down. This force stalemates for a while, and the ground suddenly collapses. Chapter 969-change. Such a huge body sank into the ground all of a sudden. One can imagine what a pulling force it was. Even if the ground is looser than before, to move such a large body, the strength must not be underestimated. Juya shouted, and his body was buried in the soil. Following that, a figure broke out of the ground, and Naba panted and performed the air dance technique to float in the sky, and hurriedly used continuous qigong cannons without a break. Nabil gasped, showing an evil smile, followed by another large qigong cannon. Although it was released with one hand, its power and follow-up power were not weak. The qigong cannon fell into the pothole and hit Juya in the middle. The blue veins burst out on Naba's head, and he roared loudly. The energy of the qigong wave doubled again. Soon, the explosion swept away, and dust floated all over the sky. Nabil panted, feeling the breath of the 9 masters gradually weakening, and finally calmed down. But how did he know that it was at his slack juncture that it came from the ground, and Juya's breath suddenly soared? Suddenly, Juya rushed out from the ground, and with a flick of his tail, Nabil's people flew far away. Following Juya, he chased in the air at a strange pace. The speed was extremely fast, and in a blink of an eye, he came to Nabil's side. Nabil was not on guard at this time. Seeing that he was about to be attacked, Nabil suddenly became wise and his fingers converged. Suddenly, a brief black light appeared around Nabil, as if the light had been sucked away, and then there was a wide-ranging explosion. Although the power of this explosion is not huge, this light can be used as a confuse move. Nabil knew that Juya was hit, and his eyes must not be able to see it. This was because he used the air dance technique, forcibly turned back, and rushed towards Juya in the opposite direction. Nabil was originally wrapped in a layer of energy, and with the speed of the sprint, a bald head was placed on Juya's belly. If you know, canines are all iron bones, and only this stomach is the weakest. Although Nabas didn't necessarily know this, but it was a different person. The abdomen was relatively unprotected by ribs, which was a weak spot. Juyi received a lot of shock this time, and a mouthful of red liquid followed the turbulent river in his stomach and came out of the spout. Juya's eyes were bloodshot. He stared at Nabas, and when the power dissipated, he suddenly lowered his head and bit Nabas. And this time, the timing was right, and it just so happened that Nabil's 2 arms were also pressed firmly under the teeth by Juyi. Juya raised his head and began to gather chakra. The black spheres gathered in his mouth and slowly turned into black spheres. Nabil turned his head to see all this, and seemed to understand Juya's purpose, which was to launch him and the tailed beast cannon together. This zero-distance contact, coupled with Juya's full firepower, made Nabal seem immortal. Will not work. Nabal stared in horror, knowing that something was wrong, and with all his strength, the energy in his whole body began to swim. Juyi felt as if a current had entered his mouth, and his consciousness began to blur, but he could endure these pains. It's okay, he's the ninth master. Juyi's eyes suddenly lit up, he raised his head with a puff, and the black sphere flew out following Nabal, who was wrapped in a black energy body and cursed loudly. But Juyi didn't care. In the sky, the white mushroom cloud dispersed. Juya looked at a black spot in the sky, knowing that it was not too late. Suddenly, a cloud of white smoke suddenly appeared around the Juya, and upon closer inspection, 9 identical Juya appeared around, and they surrounded the city in a circle. Following the same movement, the 10 giant foxes all raised their heads, and the huge energy from their mouths began to converge towards their mouths. From time to time, a black ball appeared at the front of each fox. When these 10 black balls are sent together, I am afraid that another catastrophe will be won here. 10 burst tail beast cannons. The 10 black balls rose together, and the black light in the sky shrouded the full sky like a night sky. The huge energy swept the entire atmosphere, and the explosion pushed the surrounding air away. When the thrust disappeared, the air retracted again, which formed the huge pressure difference between the two is almost impossible to be man-made. If this pressure acts on the ground, I am afraid that the planet will be destroyed. Not just the demeanor circle, but everything. The explosion was about to continue for a while. Juya looked at the sky, still not losing his vigilance. It seemed that he no longer underestimated Nabal. He was taking this battle seriously. Until the last moment, Juya would not give up. At this time, even though the 2 superhuman-level people were fighting fiercely, and they were getting more and more involved, the trash fishes were almost dead, and the undead ones hid long ago. It was true, but they all ignored one person. Captain Ginyu touched it at this time and said silently, I don't know how Nabal became so powerful. Fortunately, I didn't continue to fight with him, but it seems that this fox is the most powerful. I heard that he can change his body shape, haha. It's really interesting. Captain Ginyu flew over slowly. When he got behind Juya, Juya suddenly turned his head and said coldly, Are you courting death? Captain Ginyu smiled and said, No, I'm here to thank you for helping us clean up this traitor. Although Juyi was arrogant and killed a lot of people, he really didn't care about them, but he was not a person who liked fearless killing in essence. So Juya doesn't plan to pay attention to this little guy anymore. It doesn't matter if he lives or dies. Even if the other party wants to do something wrong, Juya can react as soon as possible, but according to Juya's point of view, even if such a guy makes an attack, it's almost like scratching a tickling for Juya. In the sky, the explosion dissipated, but Nabal's breath was still there, but it seemed that he was not in the air. Suddenly, a bright light rushed over from the front of Juya. It was Nabal, but it seemed that he was not injured by the previous explosion, but this was unreasonable. No matter how powerful the Super Saiyan was, he could not completely withstand such an attack. Juyi guessed that the previous lead ball failed to trap him. If he could avoid subsequent attacks, he would only be able to resist the power of the tail beast ball before that. In any case, since this guy is not dead, Juya will continue to look for opportunities to create another explosion like the one just now. Only in this way can he hit this guy as quickly as possible. Juya put on a defensive posture and saw that Nabaz was about to rush over, but something that Juya never expected, when he was immersed in the battle with Nabal, the Captain Nagnu behind him suddenly roared. A burst of energy suddenly erupted from his body, and Juyi felt very strange, not like an attacking move. But at such a distance, the key is Naba in front. Juya decided to ignore this trick from the rear, but it was precisely this inconspicuous trick that made Juya's eyes suddenly darken, and when his vision resumed, only I saw a huge fox appeared in front of me. Chapter 970-Runaway. This is. Juya looked at his hands, blue skin, yellow palms, and black neatly manicured nails, this is not his body at all. Looking at the huge golden nine-tailed fox that is invincible and arrogant, Juya immediately reacted, he was swapping bodies with a certain guy. And looking at the 9 masters again, although there is no change in appearance, the eyes cannot be changed. It is said that the eyes are the windows to the soul, so if a person changes, the first thing to change must be his eyes. Now the souls of the two are exchanged, the angry and arrogant Juya is in the body of this blue-skinned being, and the eyes of the ancient behemoth are no longer angry, and there is no such arrogant expression. Right now, Juyi looked at the ground, no, it was Ginyu who looked at the ants on the ground, and then looked at the bald head that came towards him in front of him. Ginyu showed a smug smile, I'm afraid he is the real boss here now. Nabble came quickly, and he was stunned for a while in the middle. In his opinion, his opponent suddenly went crazy, as if he had changed a person, but this was not a bad opportunity. But changing the talent and control also changed the style of play. For a player like Ginyu, who played steadily and steadily, facing such a clever charge, of course, he could dodge if he could. Ginyu smiled, just in time to try out the leg strength of this new body. I saw the huge beast, with the force under Ginyu's feet, jumped so lightly, jumping hundreds of meters high. Seeing this incredible power, Ginyu began to smile appreciatively. After he realized that he would try his own strength again, he didn't think much about it, he directly gathered energy in his mouth like Juya, and he must be an elite warrior under Frieza. It is difficult to extract and gather this kind of power. Do not fall him. The black ball appeared decisively and smashed downwards decisively. But the power of the explosion was far from satisfactory. Inevitably, the tailed beast cannon can't be learned optically, and Ginyu's hand is only a skin without understanding the mystery, but this kind of thing has to be familiar to him in the future. Anyway, the body's the master as him now. And he has time. Besides, Ginyu also saw that this body is not only amazing in combat power, but can also change back and forth. The most incredible thing is its self-recovery ability, so even if it is injured, it can slowly recover. Captain Ginyu laughed wildly, now he is the beast that shakes the sky and the earth. Ginyu must have seen all kinds of power before, and now he can command such a powerful body without any effort. Wait for him when I bow in front of Frieza again, I'm sure the other party will be surprised as well, Keanu thought. Such a huge fighting force was suddenly succeeded by such a villain. Juya was unwilling, and he shouted hysterically, but this weak body was no one would watch, and now he has changed from a high god to an ant. As long as the person above lifts his foot, his own gravel may die. And this humiliation is something that Juyi couldn't feel since he was born. He was born a strong man, standing at the top of the food chain, looking at everything with angry eyes, hatred, his flame is bound to burn everything, but now, even he himself is about to be burned by his own anger. Unconsciously, on this new body, a layer of scorching energy began to ooze out of Juya's skin, exuding the red light of Vivi, which was the most primitive chakra from Juya's body. What's going on here? It turns out that the soul and power of a tailed beast are inseparable. As I said before, even if he dies, his consciousness will slowly revive with the accumulation of his own energy, so Juya is now equivalent to almost slaughtering himself. All the power came out, and his soul went out of the house. It was because he had a soul, so no matter where Juyi went, his own energy would slowly start to naturally generate. And this kind of energy can only be fully controlled by Juya himself. In other words, people without qualification certificates cannot drive Juya's car. Ginyu was smug, looking at the tiny Naple. Even if the opponent was powerful, he could not be his opponent. As he laughed more and more, Ginyu suddenly felt that his body was being occupied by something. His vision became more and more blurred, as if he was surrounded by some kind of black thing. When he recovered, Ginyu found that his body was numb, but they were still working on their own, but he suddenly realized that his body was already numb. Out of his own control, the scorching energy is constantly rising. Ginyu was stunned, and now even his voice can only be heard by himself. The outer shell of the demon fox is just roaring constantly, and his movements are getting more and more arrogant. With a loud noise, the demon fox suddenly hit a hill with its head, followed by a roar after another. The steering wheel that this giant beast completely lost has become out of control. Or to put it simply, the life forms in this state can be called rage. In a state of rage, once something enters a state of rage, perhaps it is because its own potential is maximized, but it is mainly a randomness, and its actions are not even sure of themselves, let alone how to make opponents guess. Therefore, things in a violent state are neither light nor heavy, severely overdrafting one's body, and tactics are also incoherent, but the more lethal the more it is, the more lethal it is. In the same location. Nabal looked at the beast's unusual behavior and said, "What? Why did it suddenly go crazy?" The disorientated huge combat power began to collide, and while the energy skyrocketed, there was no basis for it. In short, the crazy destruction he started, and many trash fish hidden in the ground were pulled out like this. The scene was extremely chaotic. Maybe it was because of the mismatch of souls. Ginyu could see the outside world clearly, but he couldn't find the steering wheel. In that soul space, Ginyu tried frantically to maintain this body, and this was the reason why the nine-tailed body lost its sense. A big reason. After all, only a soul and body can be stopped. Ginyu just couldn't control the power of the nine tails. He began to rush around, and the more he did, the more chaotic he became. His consciousness was not completely out of order, it was just out of harmony with this body, especially this kind of thing. Power also carries negative emotions, which leads to a vicious circle. Soon, all the miscellaneous fish were almost wiped out, and the real Juya was dodging left and right among them. Nabal couldn't do anything about it, because even a Super Saiyan would have a headache in the face of a guy who wandered around. But if you don't resolve the trouble in front of you, then no one really wants to leave. Chapter 971 Joining Forces in a Crisis. Nabal was floating in the air. He was just kicked away by the out-of-control demon fox. He is now observing the situation and trying to find the best time to shoot. At this time, Nabas suddenly heard someone calling him from behind. "Hey, Bald." Nabal gritted his teeth and turned his head angrily to see that it was Ginyu. But it looks like this kid is a little different from before. Of course, he felt right about this. The current Ginyu was actually the Juyi who had been fighting with him before. "I said, Bald, I'm not here to make trouble, you can see the form, how about we join forces?" Nabal said contemptuously, "Joining forces? You want to join hands with me, huh? Do you feel that your life is in danger, or do you want to stab in the back?" These words were very harsh to Juya, but Juya didn't dare to say more. If Nabal knew the truth, he wouldn't have any good fruit to eat. He could only temporarily suppress his inner anger and pretend to be this guy, working with Nabal. Juya smiled reluctantly and said, "After all, my life is my own, so who would have trouble with me?" Nabal didn't show his attitude, and the ninth master also planned for the worst. If this guy is really a reckless man who doesn't know the current affairs, he will not be his opponent in this state, and even if he dies, he can slowly resurrection is nothing but a loss of time. But even if he died, he would have to bite off a piece of flesh from this bald head before he died, or could he still be regarded as the ninth master? The air on Nabal's body was rolling, and Juyi secretly clenched his fists, thinking that this guy is not ready to cooperate. And Nabal suddenly smiled, as if it was the same thing, and said, "Okay, I will promise you this time." Juyi also showed a smile, even if the two hit it off. Now that the matter is settled, it is hoped that Juya will recover. Juya wanted to rely on his own knowledge and Nabal's attacking power to temporarily restrain himself, and it was only in this way that Juya could retrieve his body. Although this may expose his own weaknesses, the really strong people do not need to be afraid even if they have weaknesses. But then again, does Juyi have any weaknesses? In all fairness, no, both defensive power and attack power are first class. Even if the chakra is injured, it will repair the wound on its own and stimulate cell division. Moreover, Juyi's own energy is constantly increasing. When it is used up, it will absorb energy by itself through natural forces such as air, so it is essentially continuous. Then is it true that Juya can't be beaten? Neither. Me G. Juya came to Nabal's side, shouldered shoulders, and said, "Have you found any breakthroughs when you fought with it before?" Nabal said, "To be honest, this guy is a lot more difficult than I imagined. Even if he hurts it for a while, this guy can repair it by himself, and the energy in this guy's body is like a bottomless pit." Nabal didn't say any more, but Juya could also see that although Nabal was strong and his various attributes were doubled, the energy storage in his body was not comparable to Juya's, so Juya could use it unscrupulously. Moves that consume a lot of chakra attack, and Nabal is to seize the opportunity to use ki-consuming attacks. That is to say, even if the Super Saiyan is in front of Juya, it is no match for the war of attrition, but if you change to a normal tailed beast, or when Juya has not risen to this level, it is estimated that he would have been crushed by Naba long ago. Juya smiled secretly and said, "But in my opinion, this guy is not without flaws, although the energy storage in his body is huge and the recovery is fast, but there must be a limit, too much it can't take it, and too much if it is less, his body will become weaker, just like ordinary creatures. So as long as there is a way to make him consume more energy than he is recovering, if it lasts for a while, his body will be hollowed out." Quote. A flash of light suddenly flashed in Nabal's mind, and he said with a smile, "I can't see that your mind is quite smart." Being so praised by the previous opponent, Juya feels very strange, but this is just nonsense. The real strong will of course know his weaknesses, and no one does not have weaknesses, and the strong will only take their own weaknesses to hide. This is what Qin Yang taught him at the beginning. Nabas hesitated again and said, "But how can we force him to make a move?" Juyi said, "Don't forget, he's crazy now, and a lunatic has nothing to worry about." "That's right, but..." Nabal suddenly looked at Juyi and said, "Since you have said this, aren't you afraid that I will regret it now?" Ellipsis. Winds extreme, dream of love, 773,943,984. The extreme wind, Wanwa mirror, 874,542,149. Close black lens bracket. Juya's eyebrows began to twitch. He didn't expect that this guy would be so rogue and so scheming that he wanted to take the opportunity to shut up after telling his own words. Juyi said, "But what would you gain by killing me?" Nabal said, "You are a powerful man under Frieza. Even if this incident is over now, we will still have to deal with it in the future." Juya glared angrily. It seemed that the other party was serious, even though his body was still smashing around in the distance, causing the ground to tremble. At this time, Nabas suddenly said, "However, I still intend to put the two of us in the future. Maybe now, you are still useful." Juya's hanging heart fell again, and he scolded this bald man over and over again. If Juya took back his body, he must smash this guy into 10,000 pieces. Only in this way can he relieve his hatred. Grandpa has never been brushed like this before. On the high ground, two figures flew by quickly. According to the plan, Nabal was the main bait, while Juya himself hid in the distance and used Qigong cannons to harass him. The tactics were quite successful. As soon as the mad beast saw the moving target and hurt himself, he rushed towards him viciously, not giving himself any escape at all. The tailed beast cannons are one after another, and the accuracy is far less than before. Even so, this unconscious state is even more perfect than the one controlled by Ginyu. Perfection means that its power cannot be underestimated. After dodging 3 attacks, Nabas cursed, "This guy, it's not over." Just before the next tail beast cannon was fired, Naba punched him in the face, and the unstable chakra exploded violently. Juya's huge body fell down with scorched black smoke from his mouth, and Nabal was also blown away. The result of this impulsiveness actually brought the opportunity ahead. Juya seized this point. If he links his chakra to that body at this time, Juya can transform his soul even without other external force. This principle is actually the conversion of two forces. Juya goes in, Ginyu came out. This is also the special feature of Juya's own chakra. Chapter 972 _ change again. Juya flew over. Although this body is not his own, but with Juya's ability, he can still control it freely, and Juya is still complaining about flying too slowly. However, his body was in front of him, and Juyi was so excited for a while. Nabal on the other side stood up from the pile of rubble, shook his body, looked at the fox monster in front of him and fell to the ground, and realized in his heart that the opportunity was coming. The farce that started is completely over. Naba's backbone energy, like a jet of flames under his feet, rushed forward with a swish, although it was a step behind, but with the speed of the Super Saiyan, he quickly surpassed Juya, who controlled Ginyu to drive the shell. Juya was in a hurry for a while, gritted his teeth and increased his horsepower. If this bald head took the lead at this time, his hopes would be dashed. This guy must be trying to take this opportunity to kill himself. Nabal was about to arrive, and facing the beast that fell to the ground, Nabal landed beside it, looking left and right at this stinky thing that made him tug of war. This monster, I really don't know what it is, but since it was planted in the hands of this uncle, today is your death, ahahaha. The arrogant nature of the Saiyans made Nabas momentarily proud. Juyi was so anxious, he thought in his heart that he must hold on. After Naba finished laughing, he was about to get serious, but at this moment, when no one expected it, this monster fox suddenly opened his eyes. What? Nabas wondered, there is still consciousness. But now Juya's body is no longer in a violent state, but is controlled by Ginyu. It is also thanks to Nabal that Ginyu, who is in chaos, can be relieved. Now that most of the energy was used up, Ginyu finally broke free from the huge energy, but he didn't want to stay here, but looked at the bald body in front of him. This is the only move that Ginyu can voluntarily use. Nabal made an emergency shot, but Ginyu was faster than him, and a white arrogance suddenly appeared from the body of the huge demon fox, followed by a shock wave that quickly hit Nabal. It was impossible to miss at such a distance. Facing this shock wave, Nabas didn't mean to dodge at all, because it was simply too weak for him. And the mystery of this, only Juya knows. Seeing that this guy is about to change his body again, then according to the bald temper, his body is probably going to be violent again. Juyi gritted his teeth, there was only one chance, he had to get there before the shock wave hit Nabal. The wonderful triangle is formed like this. Nabal is going to kill the demon fox, and the demon fox wants to change bodies with Nabal, while the real demon fox Juya wants to take back his body. Ginyu and Nabal were connected by an invisible line, and a beam of light was moving rapidly along that line. Juya rushed towards the light, and his goal was also the light, as long as he worked harder and faster. For a moment, the beam of light seemed to hit something, and Nabal was stunned. Facing the wonderful change in his eyes, he was stunned. He never imagined that Captain Ginyu would block bullets for him. Could it be that this guy's brain is also broken? Nabas cursed. Why, do you want to die? Captain Ginyu opened his eyes, looked behind him and looked in front of him. The huge monster was in front, and the bald head was behind him, that is to say, he actually failed just now. On the other side, Juya finally returned to his body. He slowly stood up. This familiar feeling was that his body was comfortable to use. But Ginyu didn't give up. He was now face to face with Nabal, and it would be better if he used his unique skills again at this distance. Ginyu smiled, and light began to glow from his body. But before he could finish laughing, behind him, Juyi's tail had already swept over. Ginyu disappeared, and I don't know where he was photographed. Nabas watched all this, and he didn't see anything complicated in it at the time. Nabal said, "Oh, it looks like you've finally woken up. You're lucky, I almost killed you just now." Juyi burst out laughing, he couldn't hold it any longer, and said, "Kill me." "Haha, you think too much, it was just an entertainment activity." Juya didn't want to explain anything to Nabal, so what happened just now must be regarded as his shame, and he must vent this anger on this bald head. Nabas proudly said, "But I have already figured out your ability, if you don't want to believe it." Nabas put on a posture, "I just need to knock you unconscious." Juya looked at Nabal and didn't know what to say. Did this fool really think he would get his way? Don't forget who pointed him before. But in fact, this has indeed exhausted Juya's body a lot, and now the energy in his body is far less than half of what it was before. Looks like it needs to be changed. Juya exerted his strength secretly, and its body gradually began to change, getting smaller and smaller, until it changed from an ancient giant beast to a big fox more than 1 person tall, and Juya's body re-emerged with golden light. Looking at the change, Nabil said, "Do you want to shrink your body and reduce energy consumption?" "Yes, that's enough for you." The two were fighting each other high, and they began to fly sand and stone around. In fact, no matter from which side, there is not much energy left in the body, and this protracted war of attrition wastes too much energy of each other. The two rushed towards each other, and the fierce battle continued again. Their punches were still the same as before, and the force was the same, but they didn't hold anything anymore. Now they only have one thing in mind, and the last one who can stand up is victory. Bye. In an unknown corner, when the two sides were fighting fiercely, Ginyu suddenly opened his eyes, and he smiled secretly. Although he was injured, he couldn't bear his actions. Ginyu stood up, covering his arms, and quietly walked somewhere. Suddenly he crouched behind a rock, as if looking for something. "Ah, found it." Ginyu smiled. It was a box made of a certain material. Ginyu dug it out, blew away the dust on it, and opened it. It was nothing but a red button. Ginyu pressed the button without hesitation, followed by a malicious smile on his face and said, "These two bastards, wait for me to die. The whole planet is about to explode." Following the ground not far away, a secret door suddenly opened, and Ginyu jumped in. It turned out that there were some caves below, all of which were precision instruments. But Ginyu didn't care about that. He went straight to the depths until he saw a row of baseball-shaped spaceships. Ginyu's sinister smile. Chapter 973-Destroy. It turns out that the button just now is an emergency braking device. It already existed when the base was originally designed, but ordinary people don't know it, and only 3 or 5 people who are Frieza's confidants know the secret. Exist. And even if it is known that this emergency braking device exists in every base, it is not clear its specific location. As long as something unexpected happens, after pressing this switch, in a short period of time, a fuel containing huge energy will be injected into the depths of the Earth, and the entire planet must not be able to withstand such a huge amount of energy, which will lead to overload, and then the ground starts shaking and cracking, until the entire planet is completely shattered. And Ginyu is now sitting in the spaceship. As long as the fuel is injected, according to the system settings, these emergency escape spaceships will automatically fly to a certain direction. Ginyu showed an evil smile and said, "Wait and see, you two guys, this uncle is about to leave here, you just wait here to die, ahahaha." On the surface, the unknowing Juyi and Nabil are still fighting fiercely. With the loss of physical strength on both sides, more and more flaws are revealed to each other, but the ability to grasp the flaws has also become more and more weak. After a round, both sides were gasping for breath, and Juyi's heart suddenly became unbalanced. If it weren't for the episode that appeared before, this bald man would have been killed by himself. And Nabil also regretted it a little bit. He didn't expect this guy to be so powerful. If he got serious in advance, the situation in front of him wouldn't be like this. "It seems that I have always underestimated you before, and my uncle now admits that you are very powerful." Nabil gasped. Juya replied with a smile, "It's good to know, it's not too late, but I also underestimated you. It seems that your bald head still has 2 strokes." Both sides began to recognize each other's strength, but the last time was coming. Although neither side has shown it, their aura has already explained everything. Let's make a break. The chakra on Juya's body began to change shape, and soon, his originally golden body was covered with a layer of armor, glittering with golden light. Nabil on the opposite side also exhausted his last strength. His vindictive spirit was high, and the two fought against each other again. For a time, golden light shone throughout the entire area. And the brighter the brightness, the more intense the battle. In this dazzling scene, a few hundred meters away from them, a star object was rising, but the two were immersed in the battle, and they didn't take it seriously. That star object was the spaceship that Captain Ginyu was on. Across the glass, Captain Ginyu showed a smug smile, and he was about to leave. The beautiful planet behind him that used to be the base will also be turned into a gorgeous firework in the universe along with the graves of countless soldiers. This is nothing more than a trivial matter for the entire galaxy, and for Frieza and his group, it is nothing more than exploding a planet, but countless unique life forms may completely die out. But in the eyes of these people, this is nothing, because they do not understand the meaning of it. Juya suddenly felt a sadness. Although it was not enough to affect his fighting spirit, he still felt that his energy source must be the natural energy scattered in the air. After he absorbed and transformed it into his own powerful energy field. And now, he felt that the earth was crying, although he himself had destroyed countless houses and forests, but this was different, the feeling that the entire planet was going to perish was different. But the life and death battle is still going on. Although Juya feels strange, he has left these things behind as trivial matters. Now he has completely immersed himself in the battle and fully enjoys the joy of life and death. Either you die or I forget, the two forget their feelings and fight fiercely, even if the land slides and the earth cracks, they can't stop them. Juyi and Nabal both burst out with the strongest energy, and they fought in real battles, and neither left behind. The sound of the bones colliding, the stretching of the muscles, the agile pace, every move and every style brought together the beliefs of the two. Juya hadn't experienced this hearty battle for a long time. Suddenly, a scorching airflow blew up under Juya's feet, and a gap opened on the ground. Then the gap extended, getting longer and longer, and the opening became bigger and bigger. Immediately, another gap appeared, and it was like this. Constantly, the entire ground seemed to collapse suddenly, and hot gases erupted one after another. In the distance, the clouds were like fire, the hurricane rolled up, the waves covered the sky, and many mountain peaks collapsed suddenly for some reason, and some suddenly bulged from the ground. The vision of the end had finally come, and the ship Ginyu called it had long since disappeared. The flame was suddenly used, and the orange liquid started to splash from the gap in the ground, but after it hit the rock, it turned black in an instant. A strange smell began to permeate the air, and the various craters began to erupt frantically, and thick smoke began to rise, but looking at the two people on the ground, it seemed that they had turned a blind eye to these strange phenomena. Even if the mountain collapses, even if the sea water pours back, as if nothing can hinder their pace, this is inevitable, they are too strong. As long as they think, anyone can easily achieve such a doomsday scene, which is just like destroying a ring. And with the rumbling sound, when the deformation caused by other external forces appeared on the ground, looking at Juya again, a golden light that was brighter than flames suddenly appeared on his body. And his opponent, Nabal on the other side, the light on his body seems to have become much smaller at this moment. Juyi shouted and rushed over, this was the last explosion. Nabal fought hard to fight, but like flames and angry karma, tears and pouring rain, Nabal was shot down to the depths of the ground. The deeper. Juya looked at him as if Nabal's eyes instantly went out. If the entire planet is reduced to a grave, the battle will be worth it. Juya raised his head and roared loudly. With Nabal's fall, he seemed to be defeated, and the last one standing on the ground was the winner. Landslides and cracks, seas and rocks are rotten, and the golden giant beasts stand in such a scene, as if they were eclipsed in an instant. The rubble with flames began to splash, explosion after explosion, and everything would end, but now it's coming early. Juya looked at this place. This was his last nostalgia. Although he didn't belong here at all, the moment before the complete destruction, Juya would rise into the sky and travel through this seemingly boundless but close-at-hand universe. Chapter 974-Planet 2. Time flies, on another beautiful planet, here is a pink beach, and pink tree trunks from a distance. That moment begins to blur and dazzle, even the golden sun can't take away this pink lure. Everything is full of enjoyment and luxury. Peaceful and leisurely, this is the best holiday destination, and of course the second base of Frieza's regiment. Frieza spent a lot of money to buy this place at the beginning, and the restoration work alone took a lot of manpower and material resources. Suddenly, the humming sound of the machine broke the silence here, and the liaison station immediately connected with the spacecraft in the atmosphere. After the model and other data are matched, the spacecraft readjusts its trajectory and falls on the landing net. When the hatch opened, Captain Ginyu, who was seriously injured, was carried down. "It's Captain Ginyu, how can it be? What kind of opponent can make you like this?" Ginyu scolded. "Don't talk nonsense. I can't die. Contact King Frieza immediately. The main base was destroyed. Let him see the records in the recorder." "Ah, what?" The subordinate soldier was surprised, as if he had heard something wrong. "What are you still waiting for? Hurry up, the situation is extremely urgent." Ginyu was stuffed into the healing apparatus, and the pale green liquid wrapped his body. As the wound accelerated, his physical strength was slowly recovering. It didn't take much time for Ginyu to ask for everything on his body. Pain, not even a scar. During this period, the person in charge had reported this time to King Frieza, who was far away on Namek, but to their surprise, their king seemed to always keep calm, although he was a devil when he was angry. No one dared to disobey his orders. I saw Frieza on the big screen and said with a smile, "I already know that at this time, tell Ginyu to have a good rest. I can't blame him for this, and I have written down the appearance of those two boys. In the future I'll take care of it myself." Yes, the subordinates bowed their heads, and the link with Frieza was cut off. Only afterward did they dare to discuss what happened to this headquarters. How could it be attacked suddenly, and the entire planet exploded, which was unprecedented, and King Frieza was also abnormal. He was almost not angry. In fact, they didn't know that Frieza was immersed in the joy of Dragon Ball, and there was another secret they didn't know, and even Frieza himself was deeply suspicious of this before, but after experiencing it, fully Sarah began to indulge. It was a door to a new world for him, and Frieza had just taken a step into it. On the other side, Frieza's base headquarters. Juya looked up at the sky, waiting for the final moment. But a breath suddenly came from the ground under him. Juyi lowered his head, and quickly found the source of the breath. From the ground, a very strong chi. Juyi was stunned for a moment and said, "Oh, you are still so tenacious." But what Ling Juya didn't expect was that the speed of that chi suddenly became faster. Juyi was suddenly startled and jumped up quickly. In the air, Juyi had already made a counterattack. On the ground, a bright beam suddenly emerged, but it was not a person, but an energy ball. Juya was startled, and it was too late to react. Nabil suddenly rushed out from under the ground. He came to Juya and dealt a heavy blow to the opponent. Nabil panted, as if he was quite exhausted, and Juyi didn't get much better after this. Both sides were at the stage of running out of ammunition and food. This can be regarded as 100 secrets. One wrong move, and you may lose the whole game in the end. Juya stood up with his body propped up, as if the stones under his feet were getting softer and softer. Juya's consciousness began to blur. It seems that Nabal's success just now caused him a serious injury, but he still has to insist that if he falls down, he will never climb again. Not get up. Nabil forcibly supported his tired body and said, "Haha, I didn't expect that. The one who will win in the end will be me." Juyi gritted his teeth. He was no longer in the mood to say something big. Suddenly, a movement began to occur under their feet, and a huge rock was rushed up by the underground gas. The boulder accompanies this flame. The high-temperature gas is constantly rising, and the opportunity also comes. Taking advantage of this moment, the two suddenly disappeared. And the boulder was suddenly broken by something, and only vaguely saw two shadows flying to their respective sides. Seeing the two of them had already passed around. Juyi's eyes widened, and Nabil was also out of breath. Soon, the light on Juyi's body began to dissipate, and he fell down, leaving only Nabil in the air. Watching his opponent fall, Nabil shouted excitedly, but all this was useless. When he escaped from the battle, he also began to wake up, and he was afraid that he would not be able to escape this planet, but as a Saiyan, it was not an honor to be a warrior to die in such a situation. Navel slowly landed on the ground. No matter how the surroundings changed, it seemed that it had nothing to do with him. He also gradually closed his eyes and unknowingly sank into the pile of stones. At this time, in the seemingly insurmountable desperation, a strange light suddenly ingested here, and then, the light began to spread, and soon, a door opened from space opened. Nabis seemed to sense something, but his eyes were still open when a hand suddenly stretched out from behind him and hit him on the neck, causing Nabis to faint. Following Navel, someone pulled over with some kind of force. Soon, when the whole ground began to shake, the ninth master of Navel and the two fell beside the door, losing consciousness one after another. And then in the blink of an eye, someone led them into the door. In a flash, the door disappeared, leaving only this dying planet. Somewhere in the universe, extraordinary fireworks suddenly lit up, and another star fell, scattered into countless tiny stones, and turned into dust in the vast universe. Maybe no one thought that if the time was reversed, the dust might have come from something very beautiful before, but who has the ability to do so? If there is, it is only God, the real God. The breath of Juya and Navel completely disappeared, and even Qin Yang in the distance felt something abnormal. Although he couldn't tell, Juya's breath seemed to be very weak. But Qin Yang was not worried, but suddenly said something to himself. This fox should also have a long memory for him. Qin Yang was wandering in his own space, his eyes were looking at one side, and there was a place where a huge explosion occurred. Chapter 975-Illusion. The vast universe shakes endlessly. And Qin Yang is soaring in that universe, even though his body is still here, this place is completely his own. Qin Yang closed his eyes, the sky filled with stars appeared like this, and he was like water without roots, constantly changing his form, changing the feeling that he was wandering wantonly here, as if it would never end. But with the incoming of a certain sound, just like a signal, Qin Yang suddenly opened his eyes. I saw the other side. Vegeta's momentum was in full swing. Before, he suffered from Itachi's loss, and he couldn't capture Itachi's body no matter what, but now he feels that he is going to be real, and it is this clever spirit. Let Qin Yang open his eyes. Papa, Qin Yang began to slap his palms and said, good momentum. But Vegeta didn't appreciate it. This time he really broke out with all his strength, and in an instant, he came to Itachi's side. Although Itachi saw this series of actions, the detachment speed was beyond his reaction range. Itachi did not have the opportunity to cast the spell. Vegeta laughed wildly at this and shouted, this time we'll see how you dodge. With a bang, Vegeta was taken aback. What he didn't expect was that his fist actually encountered something like a wall. Looking at Itachi's side, he didn't know why a transparent giant was born out of thin air. The skeleton, and Itachi's people are being shrouded in that skeleton. Vegeta gritted her teeth and cursed, you bastard. Vegeta erupted with amazing momentum, but he was facing Susanoo, and this kind of strength still couldn't break through this hard barrier. Vegeta frantically thought about this transparent thing and slammed it 3 times, and after the third blow, a small, not so noticeable shatter suddenly occurred on Susanoo's body. Itachi realized the power of the opponent's fist, and without hesitation, he suddenly changed the defense to the offense. With a wave of his hand, the Shaquan sword was dispatched. Vegeta felt the strange feeling on his blade and suddenly jumped away. According to the express of the Saiyan, Vegeta rushed over again, but Itachi was no longer there, and the entire seemingly huge body disappeared so suddenly and flexibly. Vegeta looked behind him, and Itachi passed by at some point. Are you going to hide like this? Vegeta provoked harsh words, but Itachi didn't seem to hear. Vegeta hated this expression of others the most. He yelled, his anger doubled, and Vegeta took a pose. Qin Yang blurted out and said, oh, that's a shock cannon. Vegeta yelled, haha, see if you can handle this move. A bright beam was shot out just like that. Itachi's eyes rolled quickly, and soon the light completely covered him. The explosion was not as violent as she had imagined, and Vegeta was suddenly stunned by the situation in front of her. This guy actually. Vegeta was very surprised. He didn't expect this armored man to be able to block such an attack from himself. I saw Itachi controlled Susanoo and erected a shield, and that 8-foot mirror could block any attack. Vegeta was even more surprised. Suddenly, a black flame burned in front of his chest. Vegeta panicked, but then calmed down. Although the flame was violent, it still couldn't hurt himself. Unless it can eat the Kai in itself. In the face of these weird moves, Vegeta can only hit the opponent with one blow. Now he has figured out the opponent's attack mode and speed, and both Vegeta are much stronger than the opponent. Vegeta turned into a flash of light and suddenly rushed over. He suddenly stopped in front of Itachi, and Chi-gun waves were sent out with both hands. Itachi erected his shield and waited for the storm to pass. But Vegeta wanted to do this. While Itachi was defending, he suddenly jumped to the top, followed by a heavy punch, which broke through Itachi's Susa, but Susa was able to fill the hole again. And Vegeta was so firmly clamped by Susa's 2 rows of ribs. How dare you underestimate me? It's not difficult for me. Vegeta burst into his own momentum, and suddenly everything came to nothing. Vegeta looked at Itachi, who was almost blown to ashes in front of him, and let out a smug laugh. These strange tricks, in his opinion, are just a bunch of decorations. Nothing can beat his fists. And when Vegeta was complacent, suddenly he felt a chill behind him. Vegeta turned around suddenly, reached out and grabbed it, and he held a kunai in his hand, and when he looked behind him, Itachi, who had been turned to ashes by himself, somehow reappeared behind him. Vegeta was stunned, and he looked back, but there was nothing on the ground. Why, will you be resurrected? Itachi said coldly, what you saw just now was just an illusion. In fact, I have been standing here since your attack, and it was easy to kill you at that time. Vegeta was stimulated by this, and it was easy. Could it be that this strange guy even rode on his head? Vegeta gritted her teeth and said, what did you say? Itachi said coldly, on the front, maybe even if I use all my strength, I may not be able to stop it, but this is not my strong point. If you can't pass the hallucination, you will never hurt me. But Vegeta didn't listen to these words at all, and he rushed towards Itachi again, but it was just a bubble. The crow flew over. Itachi appeared on the left of Vegeta, and said, I repeat, this kind of illusion is my strength, and killing you, just relying on this is enough. Vegeta punched him again, and Itachi once again turned into a group of crows, but this time, he didn't know where he was hiding, and he could only hear his voice coming slowly. Vegeta yelled, get out. Fortunately, this is Qin Yang's space, otherwise, I don't know what this Saiyan would have done here. If you can't see through this layer, you will only end up in death, and an illusion more powerful than this will make your life worse than death. Vegeta looked around, and suddenly he calmed down, thinking that he was right. Use chi, and the direction of perceiving chi will definitely catch him. In this short-lived calm, Vegeta did sense where Itachi was, and the funny thing was that this guy dared to hide beside him. Vegeta jumped to Itachi, and Vegeta thought that this time there is no way to escape. I only need one punch to hit you. But when he opened his eyes, he saw a pair of very special eyes, like a splendid kaleidoscope, constantly changing and spinning, revealing an inexplicable feeling, and Vegeta suddenly reacted to this without knowing it. He was so fascinated that even he himself did not know the mystery. Monthly reading started. Vegeta's eyes widened, and suddenly, the man fell down. Chapter 976 Going Giant Ape. Vegeta felt that he was falling continuously, as if there was no end, and he was always in free fall, but compared to what Vegeta saw and heard, this was nothing. With his whereabouts, Vegeta heard countless laughs, from the past, the present, and the future. His mind seemed to be suddenly filled with countless memories. Those humiliations were hit by people who he looked down on in the past, and those fists seemed to hit him. Not only the pain, but the torture in his heart was the worst. And this kind of humiliation continued like this. With the free fall, Vegeta's thinking began to become confused. He couldn't remember the purpose of his coming here, nor his ambition. He was completely submerged and spurned. The ocean, and everyone smiled at him, saying that he was a prince who was only bragging, and that his fists were just a tickling to them. Even Vegeta saw Frieza, who stepped on him and ravaged him as if he had destroyed his own planet. Vegeta roared angrily, but was drowned out by laughter. Vegeta resisted, tore up everyone who laughed at him, and fought back against everyone who tormented him. He wanted to return all the humiliation of those fists. And these humiliations are like free fall, with no end. Vegeta felt very tired, as if the gravity of the entire planet was pressing on him. Maybe he would be crushed to death by this. When Vegeta regained consciousness, he found himself lying on the ground, and his exhausted body had shattered his soul. Vegeta could not stand up, and even breathed reluctantly. At this moment, Itachi walked over and said coldly, "How about it? This kind of taste is not good." Vegeta gritted her teeth and looked into those eyes. Not even anger could help him now. "But, as long as you accept the development, maybe you can break through the unbreakable boundaries. You lost this competition. How about you? Are you willing to cooperate with us?" Vegeta gritted his teeth and tried to stand up, but in the end his teeth loosened and he looked up at the sky. Although it wasn't blue, Vegeta took a deep breath and thought about these things from beginning to end. Maybe it was indeed a humiliation for him, but he was powerless to resist now. "If you give me another chance, I will never look into your eyes again." "There won't be another chance, you failed now." Vegeta closed her eyes and said, "Okay, there is someone in this world who can defeat me so easily. I admit that I lost, and I promise your deal." Chin Yang clapped his hands and said, "Very good, it seems that you finally figured it out." Chin Yang walked up to Vegeta and said, "But this is not my original intention, but one for someone like you. If you don't use some means, I don't think you will accept the conditions so easily." Chin Yang squatted down, put his hand on Vegeta's forehead, and said, "But in your heart, it's best not to think about resisting afterwards. This is just a deal, and it's good for both of us." A peaceful force flowed into Vegeta's body along Chin Yang's palm. In a blink of an eye, his previous tiredness disappeared, in exchange for a newborn feeling. That's right, as your physical fitness recovers, your combat effectiveness increases again. An idea suddenly appeared in Vegeta's mind. He thought of the hallucination of that person. If one continued like this, it only took a few times, and Vegeta's battle would advance by leaps and bounds. Vegeta thought, this guy doesn't just want to use this method to tap his potential, but what does he want? Chin Yang said, "Using this method, although it can increase your combat power, it is still too slow for me, and your aptitude must be matched with a faster effect." Only then did Vegeta realize that this person could see through his own mind. Following that, a tingling sensation like an electric current spread throughout Vegeta's body. Chin Yang stood up. According to his estimation, a genius like Vegeta doesn't need to be constantly stimulated like Nabil or Raditz. He only needs to explore a little, and he will surely allow him to easily break through the normal state of the Saiyans. Limit. Sure enough, as Chin Yang expected, Vegeta struggled and suddenly turned from pain to joy. Vegeta suddenly felt that she was full of power, and this could be regarded as a real new student. The more, the faster and more of that power, and when the feeling reaches a certain point, it all explodes. Vegeta was breathing in the fresh air, and he felt completely different from before. Ellipsis. Winds extreme, dream of love, 773,943,984. The extreme wind, Wanwa mirror, 874,542,149. Close black lens bracket. At this time, Chin Yang took out the mirror and said, "Look at yourself." Vegeta was a little stunned. He couldn't imagine that his hair was standing tall and turned golden, and this steady but very light power, could it be? Chin Yang answered for him and said, "You are now the Super Saiyan you were looking for." Although Vegeta was happy, it was more strange. He asked Chin Yang, "Who are you, and how do you know this kind of thing so clearly? Qin smiled and said, although you are a Super Saiyan, if you want to be wild here, it's not enough. Vegeta snorted and said, how do you know if you don't try, and if you really know me, you should know what kind of person I am. Vegeta's evil smile, he stared at Qin. And Qin said blankly, I remember this right. He suddenly raised his hand, and saw a bright thing suddenly appear in his hand. Vegeta felt the same and said, is this? Qin smiled and said, yes, it's the moon, but it's a little smaller. After all, the moon suddenly rose into the sky, and Vegeta suddenly roared at this time. At the same time, his broken tail suddenly recovered, and his size began to change. Soon, a golden ape monster appeared. Vegeta said in a loud voice, are you courting death? You know the secrets of the Saiyans and turned me into this. Ah ha ha. Qin said calmly below, no, to me, you are just a pet. What did you say? Vegeta shook angrily, but Qin wouldn't give him time to splash. Qin suddenly appeared on top of Vegeta's head and put his hand on his head again. Suddenly Vegeta seemed to be exerted by a magic power. His entire body seemed to be frozen, unable to move any longer. Qin also closed his eyes. The energy continuously drained from Vegeta into Qin body, and Qin frowned, as if he was looking for something in this huge energy vortex. Chapter 977-Juya's message. Qin was looking for it. According to his theory, the entrance of this mysterious energy must be much wider, but after absorbing so much energy, Qin did not even find a trace of the mysterious energy. Isn't this weird? However, Qin immediately realized the mistake. This was because Qin was too impatient, and he forgot that Vegeta was now a super-going giant ape. How could this energy be comparable to that of the thumping Saiyan? In the past, Qin used a small amount of power to absorb the energy in their bodies in order not to put too much burden on the bodies of these Saiyans, but this time, obviously the tonnage is different. Qin must use full horsepower. It is possible to absorb all the power in this giant object. Qin laughed, laughing that he was too impatient. He immediately adjusted the strength, and the energy that was several times more than just now flowed into Qin body continuously. Finally, a smile appeared on Qin face. He searched for the entrance. The entrance was filled with mysterious energy, but Qin still couldn't find the main entrance to that world. However, let's absorb the energy here first. Soon, due to the loss of energy, Vegeta changed from the giant ape form to the human form, and from the second form of the Saiyan to the original black-haired form. The overall experiment is still successful, but this is only one direction. Which one is the door to the mysterious energy may have to wait for them to reach the super blue before they can decide. Moreover, with the passage of time, they will be counted. In one generation, the number of Saiyans will be doubled. Until then, maybe it will be my spring. Qin thought. As Qin pulled back, Vegeta recovered. He looked at himself and turned back to his original appearance again. He was a little surprised, but when he looked at his tail, it was indeed still there. How is this going? Qin faced him and said, in the future, there will be a Saiyan who will surpass you, and you will never be able to catch up with him. When you think you are about to catch up with him, he will start to take the next step. Vegeta was originally full of anger, but after Qin said this, he was a little surprised, and according to the current number of Saiyans, the other Saiyan is Sun Wukong on Earth. Qin said with a smile, yes, that's the person. But even a Super Saiyan can be further developed. Maybe I can't help much in this process, but I still look forward to your reaching that level. Quote. Faced with these unbelievable words, Vegeta was full of doubts, and suddenly Qin came to him for some reason. At the same time, Qin put his hand on Vegeta's head again, and he slowly passed out. And waiting for Vegeta to wake up next time, he will completely forget about meeting Qin, and his memory will still stay on the earth, the humiliation of Sun Wukong and others to him. Vegeta will head straight to Namek. At this time, Qin was supposed to control the spaceship and send Vegeta to Namek, but a certain voice interrupted his action. Qin listened carefully and said, "Oh. Is that the ninth master? Don't worry about it, I'm terrible now." The two began to talk to each other. "What, lost to Nabas? Worse than that, I'm locked up somewhere now, similar to the space you made." "Oh, what else? You can see with your senses, can you find out where I am?" Qin tried it, and Juya's breath seemed to be out of this world at all. "No, not at all, you're not dead, so you can't feel the energy." "No, I was locked up, and Nabal was with me." Qin suddenly got a little angry and said, "What? You are locked up?" "Yes, this cage is very special, even I can't get rid of it, and this person is very mysterious, maybe you know his origin, you should be more familiar with this world, think about whether there is a number one person." Qin suddenly remembered something, not a hidden character in the Dragon Ball world, but various energy fluctuations before, as if someone was quietly acting in the dark, but he didn't know it. "Juya, tell me where you disappeared last, and I'll go and see for myself." Juya reported the approximate location, which is the planet where the Frieza base was originally located. Qin realized that the previous explosion was the destruction of the planet. He blinked his eyes, and as soon as he opened it, his consciousness had already arrived at this place. Just one's own consciousness can talk so far away. Qin could tell by himself that it seemed that before this place, there was indeed some kind of spatial deformation in this place. With this kind of power, Qin thought about it for a whole circle, but failed to detect suspicious characters in the Dragon Ball world. "But this does not mean that there are no clues," Qin said. "Juya, you have a way to continue to maintain there yourself. Don't worry, the other party didn't show up. I'll contact you as soon as I see his face." "Okay, but even if there is an accident, you should be fine. Just keep lurking there and rescue you when I find out the details of the other party." "Okay, I'll contact you as soon as there is a situation." There is no clue at the moment, Qin can only do this. He never thought that Juyi could still be regarded as infernal affairs, and it was really interesting to think about his temper. But then again, after so many worlds, this kind of thing has never happened. Qin regained his consciousness, sent Vegeta away first, and then slowly thought about it. No matter who that person is, why did he target Juya? Is it at the level of the god of destruction, or is it related to King Quan? Thinking of those high-ranking gods in this world, Qin always felt that they were just maintaining the order of this world, and they should not be very interested in this kind of power. On the contrary, it is himself, Qin own purpose is only mysterious energy. Qin suddenly had a bold idea, could he be the same leaper as himself? Qin calmed down and found that it was very possible. After all, when his knowledge became richer and richer, Qin also began to recognize this world. I am not the only one who has leapt, but if there are other people here, why is he? I didn't notice it on the timeline. Could it be that he is a conspiracy-loving guy like himself? No, this is too contradictory, maybe Qin needs further evidence collection. But if there is a competitor, Qin will not let him go so easily, and not to mention the Black Three Forest rules, he must dare to move his own people, this alone is enough for Qin to go there himself kill him. Chapter 977-Namek. Qin decided to wait and see what happened, it seemed that his strategy of the conspirator was right. But will the other party perceive his presence? Qin thought about it for a while and felt that he would not, because if the other party knew about it, he would definitely not attack Juya. And knowing the specific information of the other party first, Qin can best prepare for the future struggle. I don't know what level the other party is. But no matter what the opponent's strength is, as long as he can obtain more mysterious energy in this world than the opponent, the victory will sooner or later belong to Qin. However, these are just hypotheses, and Qin has not yet grasped the substantive evidence. Qin began to think silently, thinking about his strategy. At the same time, on Earth, an operation related to resurrection is in full swing. After learning about Namek from Vegeta's mouth, Bulma and others, following Bobo's instructions, found the alien spaceship left by God. After Bulma's transformation, the spaceship is already very suitable for the use of Earthlings. Gohan, Krillin, and Bulma, the three boarded the spaceship. Soon they will reach Namek. The ghost shadow is still lurking in Sun Wukong's body, and the fairy beans are not yet mature. At this stage, Sun Wukong can only lie on the hospital bed, like a mummy, with many brittle fractures all over his body. Of course, this is also his proud record. If not for these, the Earth would have already perished. But they didn't know that far away on Namek, there were even more terrifying enemies waiting for them, and this trip to Dragon Ball was probably less fortunate. On Qin Yang's side, Qin Yang kept thinking about countermeasures. Suddenly, he noticed an aura. Although he had traveled in the universe for a long time before, he always encountered such a strange aura, just like Juyi disappeared before. There, the mysterious person left the same thing. Could it be that he really won the lottery? Juya followed that feeling. His consciousness rushed to somewhere in the universe. Suddenly Juya thought of a star. Juya was stunned. Isn't this the Namek? Big's hometown. And it's not wrong. That feeling comes from this planet. It seems that everything seems to have clues. Qin Yang's consciousness entered the interior of the planet to search further. Looking at Namek, this originally beautiful planet, but when civilization reaches its peak, it is bound to usher in decline. It is difficult to imagine how brilliant the civilization was in the last days, and most of the people who created it are man-made, no matter who it is, as long as greed occupies the whole of this world, and destruction is inevitable. Qin Yang couldn't help feeling that although his life was long, once something went wrong in the process, such as something higher than the present, or arrogance, or greed, he didn't want to destroy himself like this. He wanted to. He was also at peace in the moment before he died. He was God and immeasurable. Looking back at all the information on this planet, Qin Yang began to re-understand the ill-fated planet of Qi. Namek is a planet at the edge of the universe, more than 10 times the diameter of Earth. The galaxy in which this planet exists is very special. There are 3 small stars orbiting the planet together. It is considered to be a less active planet. The sky is green, so there will never be night here. The orbit of Namek is elliptical, the orbital eccentricity is almost 0, and the average speed of the orbital motion is similar to that of the Earth. The geological average density is 6.85 grams per cubic centimeter, which is slightly higher than that of Earth. Namek is very far away from the Earth. In the early stage of Namek's evolution, the most primitive atmosphere was already very suitable for the growth of plants. It is also because the 3 suns illuminated in turn, the photosynthesis of green plants was strong, and it further developed into a modern atmosphere. 66% nitrogen, 32% oxygen, and 2% carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Due to the greenhouse effect produced by carbon dioxide and the sunshine throughout the day, the surface temperature is constant, and it feels very good. Although the crust is composed of several large plates, it moves slowly, and there are almost no earthquakes and volcanoes. There are no 4 seasons, it is always summer like the Earth. On the other hand, the temperature inside the planet increases, which vaporizes the crystal water inside. As the surface temperature gradually dropped, the gaseous water condensed and rained to the ground to form a hydrosphere and gradually began to appear single-celled life, and then gradually evolved into a variety of creatures until the emergence of advanced creatures such as the Nameks. It constitutes a complete biosphere. Namek was originally a very beautiful planet with a large population and the birthplace of the 7 Dragon Balls in the Dragon Ball world. But now most of the people have died due to climate change, and only the elders have survived tenaciously. Namek has only days a year. There are a lot of resources buried under the surface, especially rich in high thermal energy and heavy metal minerals. The Nameks mined and refined these high hardness, high strength but lightweight and extremely corrosion-resistant metals for the vigorous development of spaceflight technology and spacecraft manufacturing. In terms of energy, a large amount of burning mud is buried around the underground meters, which is similar to the combustible substance of coal, but the energy content is twice that of coal. Right now, Yang can decipher so much information as long as he thinks hard, with his consciousness and his familiar memory of this world. However, Yang still had to look for that mysterious atmosphere for a while. After crossing the deserted desert, villages gradually appeared. Soon Yang saw Frieza and his group. Those Nameks who look similar to Biker enslaved, and they will be killed immediately as long as they get the Dragon Ball. What a vicious bunch, Yang thought. At this time, Yang was suddenly stunned, and the breath was right in front of him. I saw that among the people, a dwarf sitting on an egg-shaped seat suddenly showed a classic evil smile. He had 2 spikes on his head, pointing to both sides at a nearly 180-degree angle. Isn't that Frieza? Could it be that the person Yang was looking for was Frieza? Yang felt it again, it was true, but this guy is not a threat to Yang at all. He still has to wait for Sun Wukong to use it for leveling. If Yang catches him at this time, then... Suddenly, Yang realized something, and a smile appeared on his face. It seemed that this was the case, and he couldn't be wrong. The Frieza in front of him is no longer the Frieza in the Dragon Ball world before. Now he has been trained by someone, just like Yang helped Naba Vegeta and others become Super Saiyans, and Frieza, if Yang remembered correctly, it would be going Frieza, so the current Monkey King can't deal with this difficult guy. But it would be much more interesting if that were the case. Yang suddenly had an idea in his heart, and he immediately contacted the ghost lurking in Sun Wukong's body. It seems that all arrangements are fate. Chapter 978-Yang's idea. The ghost received Yang's instructions, and the two talked secretly through telepathy, and Yang showed a satisfied expression. Just wait and see. Yang looked somewhere, as if his eyes could penetrate everything and see the essence of the root. Now that Frieza has been secretly upgraded, as the protagonist Yang is optimistic about, Sun Wukong certainly cannot fall behind. Yang just explained an important task in detail to the ghost lurking in Wukong's body, cultivating Sun Wukong. This Saiyan with great potential will surely advance by leaps and bounds under the cultivation of the shadow. And of course, the ghost will not show up in front of him, so the target is too big, and it is likely to be discovered. So Yang came up with a clever plan to use the dream. If you know that dreams are completely created by people's senses in the mind, it is often said that someone entrusts dreams to whom, and some practitioners of the so-called cultivation in dreams are not necessarily completely unfounded. First of all, once you enter a sleeping dream, the speed of the passage of time in this specific environment is controlled by the dreamer himself. If there is any way to make good use of this, then the time in the dream world is endless. A second in reality can be a year in a dream. And Yang intends to take advantage of this, to make the ghost incarnate into a certain immortal, and help Sun Wukong to practice while he sleeps. According to this rhythm, in the future, maybe we will add Big Vegeta and others. It must now be known that the other party has a chess piece like Frieza. If Yang doesn't do some tricks in secret, I'm afraid that the Dragon Ball worlds the strong will slowly become a tool for others. But sometimes Yang can't understand why that person didn't choose Sun Wukong and others to start, and at the same time came to the mysterious energy. Why did the other guy think differently from his own? This question has always existed in Yang's mind. It seems that more information is needed to know what kind of person the other party is. But no matter what, in this way, Sun Wukong's strength will be greatly increased. Even if the opponent wants to make Frieza invincible, this is impossible. We'll find a way to turn it into a mobs for Sun Wukong's leveling. But this is a huge difficulty for Sun Wukong. According to Yang's request, Sun Wukong has to choose at least one of the Super 4 states or Super Blue, so that he can defeat Frieza. You must know that Frieza is also a fighting genius. Before that, he may have reached 1,000,000 combat power without training. But this time he was secretly assisted. Presumably Frieza will at least be promoted to the level of going form. This person is still relatively arrogant, and even if he is strong, Yang doesn't think there is any mysterious energy in his body. Yang estimates that this is the same as his optimism about Bic, and it is purely a personal preference. But this Bic, Qinyang has to wait for him to be resurrected before he can continue to cultivate. The problem at the moment is still Sun Wukong. This super blue realm seems a little far away to him now, but when things get to Qinyang, there is always a way. In the blink of an eye, it was night, and the Bullmads had begun space travel. The soldiers on Earth only left the seriously injured Sun Wukong, and the Shanzixiando had not grown up, so Sun Wukong could only lie on the hospital bed like a mummy. But this is also a good opportunity. Sun Wukong is injured. Except for a little meal during the day, he uses everything else to meditate, and at night, he uses it all to rest. Don't look at what he looks like now, but it doesn't affect him. Sleep quality. And the ghost is waiting for this time. He quietly emerged in the unattended ward, watching Sun Wukong from above. It was really a troublesome mission. The ghost turned into a cloud of smoke helplessly, and punched Sun Wukong's nostrils into his body, while Sun Wukong sneezed a little, opened his sleepy eyes, and then snorted again. Sleep. In the dream, Sun Wukong was doing warm-up exercises in earnest, while Vegeta stood on the other side, staring at him. When everything was ready, Vegeta suddenly said, "Kakarot, do you think you can defeat me like this?" Sun Wukong was shocked and said, "How will you know if you don't try it? Besides, I'm not the me I used to be." Sun Wukong suddenly rushed over. It was originally a tentative punch, but Vegeta didn't even mean to dodge. He took the punch just like that, but Vegeta's body suddenly changed, and his body suddenly turned into a puddle. Following a certain figure, he said, "The power of this punch is too weak." Vegeta disappeared completely, but the speaker was not Vegeta. "Who are you?" Wukong looked up and asked around. He couldn't feel the other party's breath at all. "I'm the one who came to train you because you look so weak." Sun Wukong pointed at himself and said, "Well, I used to be so weak, but although I have also failed, it's not like this." The voice said suddenly and sternly, "No, you are insignificant in my eyes." "Yeah, but I don't know where you are. How can I know that you are so powerful? Could it be that you are talking big?" Sun Wukong clasped his hands, deeply suspicious. Suddenly, the ghost appeared quietly behind Sun Wukong. In fact, he originally planned to pretend to be an old man in white according to what Qinyang mentioned, but Sun Wukong doubted himself so much that the ghost was a little looked down upon, so he immediately used himself. "To meet in real life. You'll know when you look back." Sun Wukong turned his head sharply, suddenly stunned. Are you talking to me?" "Nonsense, here is me accept you." Sun Wukong leaned forward, looked at the shadow back and forth, and said, "But you are just a black fog, are you a ghost, otherwise how can you speak?" When it comes to ghosts, Sun Wukong is a little nervous. The magic shadow gritted his teeth, and he really couldn't stand this guy. "How about this? The ability of the ghost to activate its own is actually not an ability. Since this is a dream, as long as you understand this, you can change anything here at will." The black on the ghost begins to change continuously, and finally becomes a human shape. Sun Wukong looked up and down at this swarthy man and said, "But you have to put on your clothes. I was always told that when I was a child." With a puff, the magic shadow changed into a black suit that suits him, and said, "Enough. I'm here to help you cultivate." Sun Wukong touched the back of his head embarrassedly and said, "Oh, that's it." Then he didn't know why his mind was enlightened, and said, "But I remember that I have been seriously injured, but I am now." Mo Ying couldn't bear it any longer. "Idiot, this is a dream, you are dreaming, do you know it?" Chapter 979-hesitant. Sun Wukong looked at himself, jumped and said, "Oh, so it is, no wonder I always feel light." He pointed to the ghost and said, "Then you are not." If a ghost has an expression, it must be full of shame. "Yes, I am also part of your dream, do you really want to become stronger?" Sun Wukong stuck out his tongue and said, "Think." Shadow sighed. "Okay, let's start right now, don't waste any more time." "Oh, that's right, it's a dream after all. Once I wake up, the dream disappears." Suddenly, the ghost figure flashed and appeared in front of Sun Wukong in an instant, and before he even had time to react, the ghost figure stretched out his hand and restrained Sun Wukong's throat. With just one click, he almost died. The magic shadow slammed Sun Wukong to the ground, and a few seconds later, Sun Wukong suddenly reacted. Ahem, are you trying to kill me? How did I just feel? I almost died. Coldly, yes, I just want to kill you, but I don't want to kill you. Sun Wukong rubbed his throat and said, but this isn't a dream, how could I be so uncomfortable? Suddenly he seemed to have a flash of inspiration. Oh, I know, maybe my injury was too serious, and it almost hurt me. I'm dead, but I won't die so easily, come on. He suddenly became motivated, and it was much more convenient for the ghost to do this. There was no need to explain to him that he did this to stimulate his potential. Only frequent deaths could make the Scion's combat power skyrocket, although it was a bit troublesome, but this is a dream, the ghost has time, and he is not Qin Yang after all, so he can't develop the potential of the other party in an instant. In this way, Sun Wukong was almost killed by the ghost again and again, only to see outside the dream, Sun Wukong on the hospital bed seemed to have some nightmare, tossing and turning, frowning, very painful. I don't know how many times later, the ghost stood there, looking at Sun Wukong. What? Did I pass the test? Coldly, no, let's play something else next. Qin Yang's world. Qin Yang looked into the distance. His mind kept thinking about things on the Namek planet. He was a little hesitant, and it was also because of other ideas in his heart. But when it comes to a straightforward choice, it's not that he can't analyze which one is more reliable, he just enjoys this feeling of hesitation. These things may seem unimportant, but they are different for Qin Yang now. Once a person grows to a certain height, they will miss all kinds of things in the past, even if it was the things that put you in trouble at the beginning, that is, the so-called confusion in your youth. Negative emotions are only temporary. After this period of time, as long as you are still safe, certain experiences will definitely be injected into your soul, making you different, and possibly different from the one you once were. Therefore, all the so-called suffering in front of you is not just like this. One day you may miss it, and once you miss these days, it will be a heart-wrenching sense of loss. Trying to get it back is in vain. Even though Qin Yang can travel through time, if he wants to find his former self, if he is not so strong and does not understand anything, it is impossible. No one can control their own time, the most essential time, once they come to this world. No matter what they do, they are like puppets wound up, they can only move forward, keep moving forward, and what they experience in front of their ears is just passing by. Even those who are truly nostalgic cannot stay in a certain place forever. This is the sadness that no one in the world can overcome. Sometimes the more you know, the more burdensome it becomes. Qin Yang is thinking about it, but he is only thinking about it, he is pretending, in fact, in his heart, he already has the answer. About Namek and Juya, it's just speculation, and no definite information has been obtained. If something goes wrong, Qin Yang is equivalent to unfounded worries, and he doesn't believe his feelings. Frieza's body there is indeed something, but I am afraid that this kind of change was caused by Qin Yang himself. He must be regarded as an outsider who invaded this world, and Qin Yang caused the timeline on the Earth to move slightly later. Even the smallest waves will cause huge waves, and Qin Yang knows this. So he finally made a decision, and he had to send someone to Namek to find out the truth. As for the candidates, Qin Yang had already made up his mind. Ban, it's your job this time. A figure with loose hair opened his eyes from the darkness, and those red eyes with double hooks kept spinning. Ellipsis. Ellipsis. Winds extreme, dream of love, 773,943,984. The extreme wind, Wanhua mirror, 874,542,149. Closing square bracket ellipsis ellipsis. Ellipsis. Don't worry, I know what to do. Soon, somewhere on Namek, a gap opened up in the space, as if the tiles were being slowly removed piece by piece, followed by a person walking out of the vortex of space, a long-haired man with an indifferent expression. He looked at the planet. It was extremely desolate, with sand everywhere. Madara reported by telephoning, "I have arrived safely, please rest assured for the rest." Well, if you think it's too troublesome, you don't have to be very careful. The power of the opponent is originally a planetary level, especially the fighting technique, you have to be more careful. Madara didn't answer, but he listened. Indeed, for him now, he can resolve any attack in the form of energy, only the fighting technique. He had heard of the strength of the fighting technique in Dragon Ball World before, but even so, Madara was still stronger than them in some aspects. Madara opened his full perception and closed his eyes. A few seconds later, when he opened it again, most of the life information on this planet had been recorded in his mind. It looks like they're all spread out. He hurried to the direction with the strongest aura. Madara had never seen Frieza, but according to common sense, he should be the one with the strongest aura. Madara stopped when a certain village-like area appeared in front of her. Although it was still a long way from there, it was just right here. Madara looked around and cast a psychic here. Just here. The outsider golem appeared. No, it should be said to be 10 tails. Chinyang collected similar energy and specially made it for him. Under Madara's control, the monster soon sank into the ground like a seed, took root and sprout, followed by a towering giant tree. Madara continued to seal, and soon the ground behind her condensed into the shape of a ball. The mountain shook for a while, and the people who were competing for Dragon Balls in the village were attracted by the sound, and all looked to the sky. Even Frieza doesn't understand what's going on. Is it someone doing something wrong, or is there something wrong with this decaying planet? Chapter 980-confirm. The boulder rose slowly. It seemed that the speed was not very good. In fact, it was just the poor vision caused by the vast sky here. Because there was no reference, in fact, the giant boulder was rising rapidly at the moment. And the top of the giant tree on the ground did not know when a huge bud was received. Frieza ordered his subordinates, saying, "Come on, let's see what's going on." This is the pretentiousness of a person like him, and it is also a kind of arrogance. It is obvious that he is the fastest, but he is impatiently waiting for his subordinates to report through electromagnetic waves. If this really happened, it must be time. It's too late. But so far, no one has been able to teach this cosmic bully a lesson. But for them, everything was too late. The boulder began to reflect light under 3 times more sunlight. Although it was not very dazzling, it was enough. At this time, the huge flower bud opened, and the sky a strange pattern was immediately projected on the boulder, a circle with blood-red hooks on it. Spot's eyes have already begun to change. But no one in this area can't see this thing, that unusual red light, beautiful but mysterious. Soon, everyone who saw the thing above their heads stopped, as if they were frozen by something, and Frieza was no exception. After all, the strength of this root has nothing to do. And this is not an infinite monthly reading, but for the overall influence, simply hypnotize them collectively, which is also convenient. In other words, Madara can use such large-scale tricks at will. Madara appeared beside Frieza, and faced with this strange creature she had never met, Madara felt a sense of disgust from the bottom of her heart. He gently touched Frieza with his hand, and only a little chakra on the other side was enough. The popular explanation is the energy in the other party, that is, chi. After the perception of the skin, Madara began to absorb this chakra, and now he can perceive a lot of information as long as he gets a little smell on the other party, and what he is doing now is to read Frieza's memory, check his past. At the same time as reading, Madara still has this spiritual connection with Chinyang. As long as Madara thinks of something, Chinyang also learns the information at the same time. Madara quickly browsed the thick scroll in his mind, and many things were not what he was looking for. And the more scrolls there are, the more disguised it is to prove how much experience this person has and how prolific his lifespan is. And why scrolls? These memories are like raw data. Different people have different formats. In addition, their hobbies and cognitive behavior habits are different, so the appearance of these raw memories is different when they are not materialized. Fuck. Madara is a ninja, and in his opinion anything with information written on it will of course be recorded on the scroll. If it were someone else, it would probably be a different scene in this memory space. It seemed that this was the most troublesome thing, and Madara had to go through it carefully from the beginning. But it is also considered hard work, and soon Banba's attention was focused on a scroll with a somewhat special appearance. It seemed to be a new addition, and it was also deliberately hidden underneath. Madara opened it and glanced at it. A smile appeared on his face. That's it, come and see for yourself. Although separated by such a long distance and in two different spaces, the expression on Madara's face suddenly changed, as if another soul had occupied his body. That is naturally Qin Yang. It seems that as long as he has the corresponding transformation ability, Qin Yang can transfer his thoughts to the character he has. Madara's scroll began to disappear, and the surrounding scenery began to change. They were completely integrated into Frieza's memory. I saw that in a hidden room, Frieza was secretly cultivating, and his momentum exploded. Frieza directly skipped the previous several transformations and turned into the ultimate white posture. But it doesn't seem to be over. Frieza's chi is still high, his muscles are starting to swell, and his bones are starting to stretch. Chi continued to rise, as if it had already broken through his original peak. Suddenly, with the appearance of a golden light, the chi on Frieza's body was fixed. Although it was not as violent as before, the structure of the Kai had completely exceeded the previous level, not to mention that the shell on Frieza's body turned golden. Sure enough, as Qin Yang guessed, this guy was secretly cultivating, and he had reached the level of going. If this is placed on the Super 2 Sun Wukong, he will still be tortured to death. But this memory hasn't been played yet. I saw a person in the shadows suddenly walking out. He wore a silver-white mask and said, "Not bad, you have broken through the boundaries so quickly, congratulations." Frieza said, "It's not your credit, how do you feel about me now?" "How about what?" The masked man stood with his hands behind his back. "You think I can't kill you?" The masked man didn't panic, but if it was common sense in the Dragon Ball world, no one had ever dared to face Frieza like this, even if there were two monsters. Frieza's father once told him that in addition to the legend of the Super Saiyan, there are two people who should never be touched. One is Beerus, the god of destruction, and the other is a magician called Cloth, the devil of Europe. These two guys must never be touched, and you have to be careful that they will come to you one day. If that is the case, even Frieza will only bow his head. Although Frieza is domineering, he is not a fool. He has watched the god of destruction from a distance, which is a coincidence, because the individual planets destroyed by him are the god of destruction. And that anger Frieza will never forget in this life, so this is why he is obsessed with Dragon Ball. As long as he can obtain eternity, Frieza will have the opportunity to truly sit on the unique god in this universe. But this masked man, even if he was better than himself before, but now. Masked man laughed and said, "No, and if I want to kill you, it's still easy." Frieza showed an evil smile and said, "You are too arrogant, although your appearance surprised me. I am a king, so I gave you enough face, so I didn't shoot at you, but your words are true, makes me sick." Under Frieza's feet, although the deck was made of dead metal, two dents were abruptly made by the soles of his feet because of his instant anger. Masked man said calmly, "I also said that I have no purpose, and if I can use my mouth, I don't want to use force, but it seems that you are still stubborn, so since you can't convince you, I think let's give a little pointer or two so you can see more clearly." New book. This time it's true, New Book 3. Introduction. The weak eat the strong, and the fittest survive. This cosmopolitan world, like a dimensional center, adjoins all realms. Here, hunters hunt invaders from other worlds, obtain soul stones, fuse soul stone skills, and powerful hunters cross the void, move mountains and reclaim the sea, and pursue the true meaning of the world. Song Chu just squinted for a while, then woke up and traveled to it. not only that, but also facing the upcoming Hunter exam. 10 years ago, the first intruder, wearing a spiral one-eyed mask, is good at traveling through space. Self-proclaimed, Uchiha Madara. Please, that's Uchiha Obito. Half a year ago, the world of the undead began to invade gradually. After the soul stones that fell were fused, what about the ghost Zanpakuto? Junk weapons. Songchu discovered that all the outsiders were familiar to him, be it movies, novels, or anime. Kill Aizen Sosuke, drop the 6-star soul stone, fuse to obtain the second soul stone skill, collapsing jade. This story and characters are purely fictitious. Any similarity is purely coincidental and should not be imitated. If you are interested, remember to collect it, collect it. Collect. Ask for collection. Very important, say it 3 times ~~.